Want to call this meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody to our second budget hearing and tonight's meeting. And I'll ask Sherry to get us started with the invocation, please.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Precious Father, we come to you today thankful that you have kept us going in the midst of all of the turbulence that we see in front of us. We ask you for more. We humbly ask you to cover us with your grace, with your patience, with understanding, with the ability to hear others, and with your presence throughout this city and throughout the entire school system. Protect our children, our teachers and administrators, and our parents while we try to make decisions for our students in Pelham City Schools. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Chief, if you would lead us. Pledge allegiance, please.
Salute, pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Beverly, if you would record the attendance, please.
Board President, all board members are present.
Thank you, Beverly. And that gets us to item number 5, Panther Pride, and I'll turn the agenda over to Dr. Cofield.
Yeah, we're going to push on and try to get through this quickly. We do have people working on the air, so I'm hoping we get that resolved. All right, so Derek has once a year, we have to do this presentation on the CIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. And Derek, I'll turn it over to you. Do what? Oh, that's fine. Do they all the board members have, this was on my desk, I'm assuming it's on all of theirs.
Yes, sir. You should all have a copy of this. If the public wants some, there's copies on the back table. You can grab on your way out. We're required to do SIPA compliance updates. The SIPA is just the Child Internet Protection Act. It was enacted in 2000, mostly to keep underage students from accessing material that may be harmful to them. Obscene material, that kind of thing. It requires 3 things. One is for us to adopt an internet safety policy that addresses several different aspects. They're all listed here. You can see them. They include access by minors to inappropriate material, safety and security of minors when using electronic communications, unauthorized access, including hacking, unauthorized use of personal information regarding minors, and measures to restrict minors' access to harmful materials. All of those are covered in our board policy under board policy 4.9, and we notify the parents every year in the student code of conduct and attendance, which includes a technology use agreement for students. It also requires us to adopt technology protection measure that blocks or filters the internet. We have doubled up on that. We actually have 2 technology protection measures. One is an on-site appliance that filters all of the internet traffic coming in and out of our buildings. The other is a web-based filter that is on all of our Chromebooks for the students. So even if they're using one of our Chromebooks away from campus, they're still getting filtered. Even though all SIPA requires us to do is filter because of our internet access. We've decided to take that one step further and make sure they're safe when they're using our devices off campus as well. And then the third requirement is to hold a public hearing or a public meeting, which is the purpose of tonight's presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have regarding those from the board or from the public.
What are these other charts and stuff? Are you going to talk about that? Or?
Yes, sir. I was going to talk about that for just really quickly after we got past the SIPA part. Nobody has any questions as far as SIPA goes? Okay. This I put in the board packet just for your information. This was our ticketing system from the first month of school, just from August 10th when teachers came back through September 1st. It indicates how many tickets were created versus how many were resolved on a daily basis is the first chart. Weekly basis is the second chart. And then the third chart shows you about how long it took us to resolve on average tickets when they came in. You'll notice that that is higher than ones I've given you in the past. All of this is higher than ones I've given you in the past. Normally, our first month of school, we would not have closed out 635 tickets simply because we have, increased the number of people we are supporting by 10. Because now we're not only supporting 2 tickets, not only supporting our teachers and staff, we're also supporting the parents and students at home. So that inevitably is going to go up. Because of that, you also see our time to resolution go up, but that is not all because of it's taken us that long to do. Because we have parents and students filling out tickets as well, sometimes they come in at 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and we don't do anything with those until the next morning. So that, that's 10 to 12 hours that's going to add to our time automatically. So our average is going to go up. And then the last one is our service level. We have that set so that we need to respond to a ticket in the first 8 hours, and we're hitting that target 80% of the time. And we have in there that we need to close a ticket within 24 hours, and we're hitting that target 79.6% of the time. So I feel like the 2 technicians, Jeff and Najron, need a lot of credit for that because they are working really hard right now. And this just shows you how well they're doing.
So basically, our third week of school, I looked at the weekly stuff. We were over 200 for the first 2 weeks. Now we're down below 100. Is that where you expect it to sort of stay?
Yes, sir. It's kind of leveling out, and it does that every year. Every year, we always see a large uptick when teachers come back, and then about 2 to 3 weeks after school, after the students come back, everything starts to level out. It's that way every year. Frank, you can attest to that. And we'll see another uptick in December when students and teachers come back from Christmas break. But that's fairly normal that you're going to see a big spike in those 2 to 3 weeks, and then it kind of drop off and level off.
Derek, I think it's great. When we started the school system, I always thought we'd need 4 technicians, and we've never gone above 2, and it seems like we're getting all of our stuff done. So I think some of that's due to the organization, the things y'all are doing. So count me impressed.
Thank you.
Do I have a question, if it's all right? Derek, with the change in schools because of the coronavirus, I mean, how has it changed your job and your world and what you do?
It's changed it. Depends on what you mean. So when we were, so when we were looking at everything over the summer, everything has been in flux, right? So every time there was an update from the state, every time there was an update from ADPH, everything, all of our decisions had to be reworked. Same thing with every department in here. Everybody had to rethink what they had been planning for the last 2 weeks because the ADPH came out with a new guideline or KIV made an announcement. So that made it harder just from a planning standpoint because it's really hard to plan when you don't know what you're planning for. So that's been the biggest difficulty this year. It has changed the way we interact with the public. We did open this ticketing system up to the public, and we offered, Marla Thomas made a great website that has how-to guides on a lot of our software. So that community outreach part of it has really increased a lot this year, which I think is honestly a good thing.
Good deal. Thanks. Anyone, any other questions? Anything?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate all you do. Really do.
Moving on to personnel, board members, I have 3 recommendations for you tonight. We have the resignation of a child nutrition worker, a bus driver, and the bus driver position is being replaced by a driver who was driving half a route and now will be promoted to a full-time driver. So 3 recommendations in front of you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Schofield. We have the superintendent's recommendations, we'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
I'll
Move to
motion.
approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We are under discussion. There being none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And those pass unanimously.
All right, good. Or there. So that's a good thing. Okay, my report tonight. So I've asked, we have our administrators and a lot of our instructional people here tonight because I think we want to address a lot of issues. I know that, so I want to kind of preface this by saying, I met last week with all of our school leaders, visiting the schools and visiting with Shannon and members of her team and everyone basically trying to ask the correct questions, asking them basically to give me some more insight, provide us recommendations, and also basically ask them, tell us what you need from me and from the board. And I asked them to look at that, in three different areas. If we stay on the staggered schedule, what improvements do we need to make? What are our issues? If we return to a traditional 5-day-a-week sort of schedule, what then will be the issues, the things that we need to improve? What about then let's look at our perspective, which is the remote learner. So we kind of went through those three things, and the biggest red flags that I felt like we needed to address based on input from them, teachers, our parents, and just things that we kind of knew, the hot topics, which I hope that we hit on all of these tonight as we go through our recommendations moving forward. But if we don't, I'll try to circle back and make sure we hit on these because I think these are all something that we certainly want to make sure that we improve in these areas, and we want to make sure that the board knows that we're addressing these and also the community. But to me, the red flags were, how are we going to support our remote learners more? We heard that a lot, and more time with teachers. We'll talk about that tonight, and they will talk about that. The other red flag was this concept of traditional school needs to be or have more normal teacher interaction, and it shouldn't be going to school and basically being virtual and being on the computer, working through software. If they come to school, we're not sending them to go sit in front of a computer. Difficulty with the content, some of the software content, number of hours being spent on it, kids getting stuck and not being able to make progress. That's another red flag that we've talked about. Keeping kids clicking through the content and maybe using Google to help with their quizzes and things. That was a red flag issue. Just the concept, are we getting input from our teachers? Are we seeing what other systems are doing? Is there something better out there? We are all willing to steal good ideas. We had that conversation. And also, what kind of parental input are we getting? Are we hearing from our parents? So I have board members I sent you, and you should have a copy of our COVID instructional recommendations. So I'm talking through some of these and asking our team to, I think you need to hear from them, not so much from me. I will try to guide the conversation and make sure we're hitting on certain key points. And then as we get through moving this information and they share with y'all what their concerns and what their solutions are, then if we don't hit on something, we will circle back at the end. So I just want to start by talking about a projected timeline. There are some systems who have gone back to school 5 days a week. There are some school systems that started today with all virtual learning. So people are doing lots of different stuff around this, and we're trying to do what we feel is best for Pelham. And I think everybody has hard decisions to make. So, it is my thought process right now is that as we're looking at our data and we are collecting, I think, really good information. Our team has built a really cool table so we can collect information, and our nurse updates that every day, and I'm looking at that 3 or 4 times a day, seeing what's going on in our schools. We talked a little bit at the last meeting about some of our trigger points. We talked about if we could maintain less than 5% absences due to COVID quarantines and cases, that would be a situation where I would feel more comfortable us looking at going back to school. What I am proposing tonight, or what's in my head, and we can certainly discuss all of these, is that by this Friday, give us 3.5 weeks in school, the end of a full 3 weeks. This Friday, that I will do my last evaluation of our COVID data and determine any changes. And if our data is good this Friday, then we would make the announcement either late Friday or over the weekend that we would return to a traditional format on Monday, September 21st. After talking with our team, and we're going to talk through all of these issues. Right now, that recommendation would be 5 days a week for our elementary schools and 4 days a week for our middle school and our high school, and we'll get into the rationale for that as we go through the different parts. So let's start with the secondary first. Let's have a conversation and let's try to hit on all of these things. And so I want to talk about the staggered schedule first. And I do need to make the point that of all the schools that I'm concerned about right now, it would be Pelham High School when I just look at those numbers. Because again, we're just not going to make a decision based on it's time for everybody to go back to school. We need to be looking at data and numbers. So when I say that, for anybody here at the meeting or out there in virtual world, that don't make the assumption that, hey, we're starting, because we are going to have to look at the numbers on Friday and we're going to make decisions based on that. And I will say that Pelham High School is the one that's closer to those trigger numbers compared to anybody else. Floyd, if you have anything to do that there, we appreciate it. All right, let's talk about. So I have to. We're going to talk about staggered, then we're going to talk about traditional, then we're going to talk about remote and all the issues. And so there are 3 or 4 bullet points under staggered. And again, these were, they gave a lot of recommendations. I've tried to consolidate it into a couple of sheets here. But under the staggered schedule, some of the recommendations or areas for improvement that they mentioned to me, I'm going to address a couple of these, then we'll let them talk. First of all, even the numbers out the best we can for kids who are on the green and gold. I think you'll hear that from the elementary school as well. When we broke kids up, that's great when it's 7 in one and 7 on the other, green and gold. But sometimes it's turning out that it's 10 in one and it's 1 or 2 in the other. Well, that's kind of awkward for students and whatever. And they try to work with the parents to get them to agree to that. Sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes it's not. But that is pretty simple to work out. I'll go past the second bullet, although it's important, but the third bullet is really just troubleshooting efforts in Ingenuity courseware. And so I'm going to let them. So we've had issues that we know. I'm going to go back to the red flags. The amount of time it's taking kids to work through it. All these things. And so I mentioned use of Enos, can y'all, and I'll let anybody who wants to take it. And by the way, I don't know, Valerie Slade is our instructional coach at the high school. Alicia Melton is instructional coach, also assistant principal at our middle school. And I only had 2 chairs in the front, so I couldn't pick and choose between the principals. So I put those 2 on the front. Our administrators, of course, behind them, along with Ms. Touchdown from the high school. So I will let whoever wants to be brave enough to kick this off first from the middle or the high school to talk to us about some of the things related to Ingenuity and some of the changes that maybe y'all are making and where we are with that.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and start. But seriously, I just, first of all, Derek, I just want to thank you. You've had a really tough road and you've really helped us. And I know you're limited staff, but I just can't thank you enough because your ability to be able to do this has really helped a lot of our issues at the high school. And I can't speak to the secondary level, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of across the board. So, I told you guys at the work session, a couple weeks ago that we're gonna be fine. It was just week one, we just kind of had to give everybody some time to kind of get settled in. And I know that we kind of had an uptick in, there's a lot of concerns, and all the concerns are very valid. I mean, Mr. O'Neill, I know that you spoke a lot about those, and they were very valid. But regarding our schedule right now, we've worked really hard trying to even out the green and gold students. We've had some conversations with parents about, the why or whatever. We've been able to accommodate, but what we've been able to do is we want to make sure that we're working with our counselors, working with our teachers to be sure that we have enough spacing in our classes in order to accommodate. And if not, then, we've had to make some adjustments, but our parents have been wonderful. They have really worked well with us. We worked well with them to make sure that they had everything they needed for their students to be able to provide that opportunity. I can't speak on Ingenuity. I'm gonna let Ms. Slade, Ms. Touchstone talk about that, but, I know one of our bullet points was, talking about the e-notes. Ms. Slade can talk about that, and we really had a downtick, in issues and problems, concerns with all the changes that have been made. Not changes of standards. We're still keeping our standards right there where they need to be. Some of the other stuff that allows our teachers to be able to enrich our students with the teaching aspect. So that was really important. So I just want you guys to know that our folks have worked really hard. Week 2 was much better than week 1. Week 3 is already better than week 2, and we're going to be fine. And we're really doing a really good job. Our teachers are getting in their groove. The kids are getting in their groove, and so we're finding a lot of things to be working, I think, better than we originally thought. So Ms. Slade, if you wanted to go ahead and speak on the numbers and the information that you were able to pull today.
Yeah, so, first of all, one of the issues when we came out of the gate, we noticed there were pacing issues, and that was one of the things that parents were very concerned about. So we went in, there are 67 courses that we're using Ingenuity for at the high school. We went through each and every one, and we ended up modifying 32 of those courses to allow for better pacing and more reasonable amount of time on task on the computer. That involved lots of different things, but mostly teacher input. I worked with each individual teacher to do that effectively. We took out things that were, like she said, not standards. Some of the more busy parts are things that we believe that our teachers wanted the autonomy to do themselves. So we removed some of those tasks that the teachers could do out there in the classroom. We looked at AP classes. That was one of the areas where we wanted to really make sure that the AP courses were in line with what the College Board would recommend. And so in some of those cases, we made some significant edits to those. And in a couple of cases, we decided to go ahead and go with Google Classroom over Ingenuity in those courses. So everything was on the table, essentially. We wanted to look at each individual course and find out what was best for that particular content area. And so when we did that, that was when we saw the greatest impact on the students. I went around to multiple classes, multiple days, and talked to students just to get their heartbeat, see what they felt. And as soon as those edits began to be made, they were instantly relieved. They said it was much more doable, that they felt more confident, they felt more comfortable. And that just had a trickle-down effect. The kids were more relaxed, and then the teachers began to get up and be able to teach more and kind of get a groove. And that was probably the most important thing that we did in Ingenuity. The other thing was the red flags that we talked about, those stoppages. That was a concern of parents and students alike, feeling very nervous when they got a stoppage. But that involved educating our teachers. So we went in and talked to our teachers about those stoppages and what kind of options from the table. On a Wednesday, we called them all in by department and had a PLC where we talked about what can you do when you have a stoppage and how fast do we need to clear those and what do we need to do.
PLC.
I'm sorry. Professional Learning Community, sorry. There goes again. Those are just kind of like where we just meet with our teachers by department and talk about, what we got going on. So that was very helpful because just today, this morning, I pulled numbers at 8 o'clock after a long week, and I only had 16 stoppages, and we have over 1,000 students on Ingenuity taking multiple classes. So I had 16 stoppages this morning, And I checked it again at 3:30 this afternoon. I had 24 stoppages this afternoon. They were different people. And I can see in Ingenuity, those stoppages happened today on the 8th. So those were not new. I mean, those were not old, they were new. And so only 4 students had a stoppage today that was more than 1 day old. And that doesn't mean the teacher's not attending to it. It just may mean that they have more attention that they want to give those students. So I feel that's
So stoppage is when they're in the curriculum and they come to say a quiz or a test and they're not allowed to take it at that point.
yes, ma'am. There are multiple kinds of stoppages in Ingenuity. One is Ingenuity is set up for you to get 2 attempts on a quiz, for example. So if the student comes in, they take it and they're not successful, they can take it again. And then if they fail that quiz 2 times, it stops them so that the teacher has to look at it. And what's great about that, it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because then they can actually go in and see what they missed. They can see how much time they spent on the quiz. They can go back and see how much time they spent on instruction. And so they can actually pinpoint what the weakness is and address it with that student. So that's not a bad thing. That allows them, that keeps them from going on in the content when they're not ready. So that's a good thing.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, we set it up globally that way. When you first set up your courseware, you can set it up where a student can just breeze on through. And we have done that before when we've used Ingenuity in our pathways, but what we quickly discovered was it didn't allow us to do the differentiation that the students needed. So then I felt that they kept going with it and continued to fail and fail and fail. But instead of having a stoppage, I can say, okay, Shannon needs some help with numbers of operations and that strand. So I can assign some material to her. I can do Screencastify. We've had teachers I watched a great teacher Screencastify remediation of one student. And so it's a safety net for students. And so as Ms. Slay mentioned, it might be perceived as a negative thing. Oh, I've stopped, I can't move on. Well, we've stopped you, which we would do in a traditional classroom setting. Hey, let's not move to the next thing until we've mastered this content.
The other kinds of stoppages are, one is for tests. We have it set up globally as well, that the teacher must unlock the test. And we did that intentionally because we are trying to keep them somewhat on pace so that when the teachers do get up and give lessons face to face, the students are all within the same unit. They may be at different places, but they are within the same unit so that they can give instruction that is meaningful and relevant to what the students are on at that time. So when they work a little bit ahead, they may have a stoppage while they're waiting for the teacher to unlock it, but that is also intentional on our part. And the final one is just a graded assignment, but that's not a true stoppage. The student is allowed to progress in the software when they have an assignment that needs to be graded by the teacher. They can continue on. There are a few things that require teacher grading, like all the essays or projects. But I feel really good about what we're doing in Ingenuity. I think it's really working. Another thing is time on task. That's probably the last thing I'll mention today. I went and pulled some numbers today to see that average time on Ingenuity. The first full week of school, our average time was 16 and a half hours. After the edits, second full week, that average went to 14 and a half. So I feel very good about that.
Over a week, we're talking about a week.
Over a 7-day period. So I do believe, and I'm kind of like Dr. Cofield sometimes says this is the magic number in my head. The magic number in my head has been about 15 hours, so that's about 3 hours per day. Ingenuity, because we're looking at normally about 5.5 hours per day in a normal school day. So, and we have kids who have Ingenuity plus the classroom, so they have classes in other areas as well, not just Ingenuity. So I'm seeing most of our kids kind of staying in that range, We have a few that are over 30 hours, but for a variety of reasons. Some of those are over 30 hours because they may have all 7 classes in Ingenuity. But I've looked at all of those today. I see no pattern that is alarming to me as far as the time being too great.
So I want to jump down to middle school because you're talking about pacing and those things. I want to come back to about sitting in the room and working on the computer versus teacher interaction. But I want to jump to the middle school.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
before we get to the middle school? I wanted to go back to the modification of the courses. A couple of things. First of all, what amount of time did it take to do this? I mean, I would think that would be a pretty complicated process,
Yes, sir.
especially this had to be done after the school year had started.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
She has a blood pressure cuff in her office.
I asked this for two reasons. I want to try to ascertain if this could have been done ahead of time, missed something on that. I'm not saying that in an accusatory way at all. But I also am trying to get a feel for just exactly how much we've asked of you folks. I mean, if somebody would have told me when I was teaching that I had to go through my curriculum modified after the school year had started, I'm not sure I would have survived the day. And I'm not trying to be trite in saying that. So I mean, were all the teachers involved in this? How many man hours did it take? I'm really curious to know how all this was done.
I think we have an incredibly dedicated staff.
Yeah.
And I just, it was everybody just doing what it takes to be successful. And I can't say enough about the teachers that I work with on a daily basis. I know the team we have there at central office and my admin team, and the relationship we have with the middle school was very collaborative and very efficient, and it had to be.
I mean, are we talking about fill room at midnight?
I can tell you that there were many, many
Our
nights.
instructional people worked every day for many hours. And I think there's a lot that I just want the board to know. So, again, I go back to, if you'll remember, this wasn't a top down, y'all need to do this. This whole thing came from the teachers looking at, okay, how am I going to handle remote kids while I also have kids in my classroom, and the consideration to the Department of Public Health that we may have large groups quarantined or teachers quarantined, and that might be a revolving thing. So as our teachers became, and basically came up and said, what can we, I think that, and so it was, y'all began tasked with, although I think there was some concern originally, but okay, how do we make this work for our teachers? So we dug into that. And of course, we wonder, and look, there's still issues now. We'll talk about some other stuff. But I don't think they've really stopped working to get those issues fixed.
We used our leadership team, our teacher leadership team, when we all met that one night in Broder, and I remember this that was the night of the dry race. When we met and we were up there until 8 or so, trying to figure out how we were going to do this, what was going to be in such a fluid time with quarantine possibly happening, shut down, and no, we didn't want to repeat it the spring. When we decided on that, we said we had to combine. Coach Hill called in the leadership team of our teachers, and we presented it to them and said, what do you guys think? Because they're the ones that have to do it. Those teachers have to do it. And they were like, at first, they were scared like we were, and then they bought in. And I knew once we got that group of strong teachers involved, that it would trickle down to the others, and it did. And one by one, we saw them all buy in and go, okay, we just got to tackle, or cross this hurdle, jump this hurdle of figuring out this program. And that has happened. It's kind of like last week, I think, was like the ice bath challenge where they dumped the ice on you and you're shocked. Everybody was in shock, parents, students, and teachers as well. We were the only ones not in shock because we were bracing for this. We knew this was coming. But then now we're all kind of like warming up a little bit and figuring it out. Is it ever perfect? Ice dumped on you? No, but we all knew that. But now we've adjusted our temperature, and I think we're getting, like Ms. Slade said, in our groove of this. And I think it's going to be standardized in a chaotic world. It's the only thing we can find to be a good foundation that we keep equity between remote and traditional, and teachers being quarantined or students being quarantined. Ms. Slade.
I just want to ask, I mean, could we have anticipated this and done this sooner? Had it been possible?
Well, if I can jump in, at the
Sure.
middle school, that's exactly what we tried to do. We had all of our courses set up ahead of time, and we went through and, we sat down with teams of teachers by content to look at kind of the stats for each class. So how many instructional hours was the software program saying that it would likely take students? So we really did try to do that on the front end. I think one of the major issues that we run into, it's just because the program maybe allots 20 minutes for a student to get through a certain lesson. In actuality, it's taking our students longer, and so we needed to accommodate for that, which was something that we didn't really know maybe on the front end, that we would run into that issue. Another thing too is, our teachers are filling in a lot of gaps. Our students have been out of school for 5 months now. So we always have the summer slide, but it's amplified a little bit more so right now. So even if a program is maybe throwing them into a lesson that's supposed to take 20 minutes, our teachers are doing tons of front loading. They are really trying to prepare our students to be successful with those lessons. So just the time it takes for students to be successful with each of those is going to be a lot longer than what a program is estimating. So that's why we've had to make some of those changes, kind of once the year got started. So I think we try to, accommodate for these things as much as we can see them coming, but, just the experience that our students are having both in the classroom and at home were things that needed attention even once we were in it. So we've had to make some of those adjustments.
And these 32 courses that we have had to modify, that's been done in how long a period of time?
Since school started, or before school, we started modifying, we started noticing as we would at nighttime go through a course as a student, we would notice things took a little bit longer. And so we started modifying prior to school starting, but it wasn't until our students started to be assessed and we saw the deficiencies that they were having and what we needed to remediate that we really went through and started paring down courses. We were talking today, I was getting some feedback from a classroom teacher who's a great classroom teacher. She's had a lot of success, but she said, this is the first time that I've always looked at my standards on a superficial level and I know what to teach and what to teach, when to teach it, but now I'm really digging through and looking at the skills required to teach the standard, looking at the grade before, looking at the grade after. And so our teachers are amazing. I mean, I've never worked with such a dedicated group, and they're working at night. I will on the weekend log into Ingenuity and I see lots of people teachers working through, checking work, doing things. And so I don't know where we would have found more time to devote to the program.
I simply want to say here to our cynics that this is not set up. Maybe I already said this isn't set up. I had no idea that we were going to have this discussion tonight. If you would have told me that we modified 5 or 6 courses out of 67, I said, wow, that's pretty hard to do once the school year starts. 32 is unheard of. And I'm really amazed. I'm very curious as to how we were able to do that, and I'm glad I found out.
That's just at the high school. That's not counting the middle school courses and the elementary courses.
Yes, but that's best practice anyway. A teacher, whether if it's their own content, as they start the year, no matter what, they're gonna adjust and modify no matter what they're doing to meet the needs of the students that are in the classroom with them. So whether it's on a computer-based program that we're utilizing and they're modifying to make it, ensure that they're front-loading concepts so that the students have that, or whether it doesn't matter. What they're going to do what's best. They're digging into standards deeper. They're going to work through an instructional team digging through to make sure that we're going to take out not necessarily unnecessary, but things that they can take care of in the classroom with those face-to-face students or utilize the Google Classroom.
So pacing at the middle school, where are we with that?
It's still kind of a work in progress with just a few of our courses where we're still running into a couple of pacing issues. But we sat down kind of that first week when we kind of found out that a lot of our courses had a pacing issue. And again, just going back to there's the estimated time that we thought it was going to take students to work through some of these lessons versus the reality of what was actually happening in the classroom and what was happening at home. So we made, I think we altered about 20 of our courses within that first week. And then there's some where as we're getting different feedback or as we're digging into certain things or as, we're realizing that teachers can't go as deep into some of the standards as they wanted to, we're having to make some of those adjustments so we can make sure we're doing what's best for our students as far as that goes. So there are a few here and there that may still need some tweaking, but by and large, we went through and finished out those courses as much as possible within about the first week.
So, even today I got an email from a parent concerned about pacing and amount of time, whatever. So at what point do y'all feel like at the secondary level, high school, middle school, we will have these pacing issues worked out so that we're pretty comfortable? It's not the content that is instead of us, maybe it's the kid not doing what they need to. Because right now, I think it sounds like we're still working through some issues. How long is that to be expected? That reasonable? I mean, we're going to be there at the end of this week. Are we still a work in progress? It's going to take a couple of more weeks. Tell me what's on your mind.
Can I say, one of the courses that we are concerned about is math. We have a new course of study this year. The state rolled out in time of pandemic, a brand new course of study, and new courses in math, and specifically seventh grade accelerated math at the middle school, which is a brand new course, and it is a compressed course. So basically, it's taking 2.5 maths and put into one course. That's difficult, especially for kids who missed a good semester of math instruction. That course, I don't think it's necessarily the pacing of the course. I think it's the fact that we need to have students they have some skill gaps that's making them not have a good entry point into the course. So we've been talking about today some of the things that we're going to have to do is ask our teachers to make more instructional support videos. So on the days that the students aren't in the building, that they can access their teachers' videos, the teachers going over the content more explicitly instead of having a link to a Khan Academy video or the work in courseware. So we're going to have to go back and look at those skill gaps a little bit more. So math, I think, is our biggest area. We're also teaching a course of the middle school that is no longer in the course of study. We have another year to be able to do it, which is Algebra 1. So that's a course that we're having to look at. So the two math courses I hear the most questions about are the Accelerated Math 7 and the Algebra 1. But again, we're working with a new course of study, and so math is always a difficult course. But I feel like math this year we might continue throughout the year to have some content specific, but I don't think it'll be pacing. But there are a couple courses at the middle school that we're still evaluating. I know Ms. Slay is going to help at the middle school with the math courses a little bit more, look at that alignment. But the rub of it is that our kids missed a semester pretty much in math. And so there are some skill gaps that are making them not have an entry point into the new math.
And Ms. Slay's background is math, and I think Ms. Melton, yours is science, correct? So. Continuing on with red flags. So this
Just can I ask, well, I'm sorry, I want to, I think the question that I would have if Bobby or John Rhodes was a student at Pelham Park Middle or Pelham High School, again, is that all that is well and good, but my kid is a really good student and he's getting killed right now. Mm-hmm. And how is that going to affect his grade? And I mean, that's the bottom line, I would think, for a lot of parents, that these are all understandable, but if it turns an A or a B student into a C or a D student because of these glitches, I mean, that's pretty tough to take from a.
We're not going to let that happen. We are looking at longitudinal data of a student. We're looking at prior grades. We're looking at state assessment grades, and we know how important, especially with our secondary students. You know, that GPA is tied to scholarships. It's tied to so many things. We are not going to let a child, because they are having to work independently at home in a math course, which would be incredibly difficult. We're not going to allow their grades to suffer for that. So we're looking at Ingenuity as a formative learning process. So in the formative learning process, you're not penalized based on your learning of the process. So if we see students who are not learning, we are not going to penalize them grade-wise for they're not learning. Now, that doesn't mean if, my son would always spend the least amount of time possible on something, and he would click on through and fail. He was not giving his time on task. But when we were looking at students who might not, I brought up a kid the other day, and I said, hey, I know this child is not doing really well. So we looked, and the child had spent a long time on the task. And so I was like, there's something happening here. There's a breakdown, because it's not the child's just clicking through. We can tell a difference. We're not going to penalize the child for that. So we're looking at this as a formative learning process this year. And yeah, it's going to be difficult to go through and analyze those grades and analyze previous year's grades and the assessment grades. But we also have, we're still giving assessments, state assessments. That's a good indicator where students are performing nationally. I think those looking at that. will help us with grading. But no, that's something that we've discussed over and over again. I don't want a child's grade to plummet because they're having to take a new learn in a new way.
The other red flag that I think we've got to address is, our, and we've never had to address this in our school system because this is not who our teachers are, but there's concern that we've given them some really nice content on a computer, and have we turned our teachers into, or our traditional school, when kids come to school, are they sitting in the classroom working through a computer and not getting any time with the teacher? And can y'all talk about that? Because y'all know that is not who we are, and that's not what we want to stand for. And if we have those issues, we're certainly going to address them. But can y'all speak to that some, please?
I would like to say that we have, as an admin team, we have been in and out of the classrooms on a daily basis to see teaching and learning going on. And our teachers have adjusted well to the fact that now we're going on week 3. They have known the issues from week 1, week 2. We've made those modifications. And we have teachers adjusting. So now they're up teaching their students, and there still is some Ingenuity time. But what we also have to realize, and I can only speak to the high school, we've had teachers out for whatever reason, doctor's appointments or whatever. Teaching and learning is still happening, whether the teacher is not there. If you have to pull the PE teacher, the ISS teacher, the long-term sub, our students are still on pace to learn. And our teachers, regardless if they're there or not, they're still communicating with their students so that we can continue reaching out to them remotely, whether they're traditional. So, whether our students are quarantined or they're sick or they've got a sinus infection, they're gone, they still have the ability to stay on track. And I think that's the beauty of this program. And our teachers are standing, they're not just sitting behind the computer, rolling up the computer and saying, hey, y'all get on your Chromebooks. We see it every day. We're in and out of those classrooms. Now, there are times that we are adjusting, that there may be, okay, we're going to teach this little bit, you guys get caught up, or they get an enrichment lesson to prepare them for whatever's coming up next with the Ingenuity course, that it prepares them for that, or they do it on the front end and close on the back end so that there's some questions as they go into their virtual learning Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or whatever the situation. And Ms. Lay, Ms. Touchdown, please jump in, but that's what we're seeing.
But we know it was an issue because I've never had a complaint about that in 6 years, and all of a sudden I'm getting complaints about that and concerns about that. So I know, and some of you tell me, and we have parents, I know that this has been an issue in the beginning. So why? Yeah, tell me why we're not seeing our teachers up as much actively engaged in the beginning, and where is that going to move going forward?
I've tried to think of a really good analogy for that for the last 2 weeks. I think if anybody here's ever been skiing, but they take you on this little bunny slope and they're like, this is great. And then they put you on that lift and then you go, and they say, go. And it was kind of like that. We were learning about Ingenuity, we're on the bunny slope, and then school started and we went up on top of the mountain and we had to go. And I just think everybody for that first week, students, teachers, parents, the company Ingenuity, the Wi-Fi, it was like the whole world had to go, wait, what? And it just took a minute. And I do think that you're right, Dr. Coco, the teachers were not really at that moment teaching in a traditional way that first week, because I think what they were doing was just trying to get the kids, get themselves, get each other, get us, everybody let's just calm down, let's see what we've got here, and let's react to it. So a lot of that first week was really, the teachers were learning how to teach again in a different way, and the students were learning how to be learners again in a different way, and parents were learning how to parent in a different way, and I went through that as a parent. For those of you that don't know, I have an 11th grader in high school, so I did this one day. I went home and I experienced some of the same concerns that were voiced in the room. So I could completely identify with everything that was being said. And so just seeing the change in my own personal child since we've made these changes, it getting our feet under. And I think that's what's happening. Is teachers are getting their feet under them. The students are getting their feet under them, parents are, Ingenuity itself, the program that we bought, has figured out how to fix some things, and our Wi-Fi is better. It just took a minute.
Any sweeping change like this we would ever do in education, we would have studied for 5 years or more, and we would have done pilot tests and things like that. But literally, we had about 3 weeks to really make the decision to move forward. So having done that, it's kind of like being thrown in the deep end to learn how to swim, and I think we're doing really well.
So at the high school, y'all are feeling pretty comfortable that our teachers are getting the niche and that they are going to be actively engaged and whatever. With middle school, what about? Tell me where y'all are with this.
Before we, I'm sorry, can I? Sure. I just want to, I want to make sure I got a handle on all of this. If I was American history teacher at Pelham High School, okay, and I came into my classroom during this period of time, all right, I come in, I have 10 students. Can you walk me through what that class period would be like? What would I be expected to do during that period?
She can't,
As a
because she
teacher?
teaches math. I'm just kidding, of course she can. But, I mean, just looking at the program, and I've been looking at it through the niece. I have a niece in 6th grade, middle school, so I looked at her stuff. Just looking through it, I would have to go in and prepare my lesson by going all the way through it and looking at the test. Because I'm not making the test. We would have made our test out. But Ingenuity made that big test, so I need to know what highlights I need to hit. So when they come in,
That sounds kind of like AP.
right,
Sounds kind of like that.
right.
Just to
So
stand.
you're not making the test, the
Right.
college board made the test. So I would have to go through and pick that out, and that's what I would start my day with. Guys, you know, hey, take roll, do all the normal things, and then start off with some sort of, all right, we're talking about Andrew Jackson today. So this is let's talk a little bit about the guy and what he was about, and tell the stories, the good stuff, the interesting, the cliffhangers kind of thing. And then toward the end, so they don't get behind, you have to let them get into that and start going through that introduction with those videos and take those little assignments and the quizzes that come along with it. So it really doesn't change. I mean, as far as Ms. Bogert goes, best practice, you know, she would come in your room, she wants to see you doing multiple things. Letting the kids talk, letting them doing maybe some seat work, I guess they would call it that. And then, you know, the only thing is our chart papers out, Ms. Bogert, and our carousels. We can't do that because we got to stay socially distanced. But the other things can still happen. What you would have seen in the classroom when you were teaching, and some when I was teaching too, a lot of it, we would still get to do those things.
Now, while that's going on, how are the virtual students being taught during all this? I mean, one correspondence I got said that some of the teachers' times during a classroom had to be set aside to deal with virtual students. Is that true? Is that
Well, we're going to address
okay?
the remote students all by themselves. Can you hold on to that?
Sure.
I have some questions
Sure.
about traditional.
Yeah.
I guess what I keep hearing is traditional students are going to continue using the Ingenuity curriculum. So on days they're in class during the staggered schedule, where they may have some teacher-led instruction, which I hope they do, it will be on the Ingenuity curriculum. It will not be the traditional curriculum had we not been in a pandemic.
It's the
Same
standards.
standards.
So a lot, it's the same content, most of the same text,
So if they're in a classroom and we are having more teacher-led teaching, then they still have to go home and do the actual work on the Ingenuity system, even though they're traditional.
And I think that is to me the balancing and our teachers figuring out how much, you know, to me, the computer, the software is nothing but a resource. It's no different than a textbook. It's how we use it, and just, you know, go back to the days when we were in school when, you know, you had the teachers that used a little bit of the text, but they were dynamic and all this other stuff. And then you might have teachers who gave the textbook and said, read the chapter and answer the questions at the end of the chapter and do the vocabulary words, right? Well, even with a textbook, That's not what you wanted. You didn't want to go into a classroom where the teacher gave you a textbook and that's all you did. But you did want the teacher to use parts of the textbook as a resource. So it was always a balancing act. And I mean, I think that's the balancing act that we're looking for. We still want the art of teaching going on, and we want the interaction for the kids and the relationships. And I think that is our expectation, y'all's expectation, our teachers' expectation. We've got to make sure we get there as soon as we possibly can. And so those are the issues that parents have when their kids go to class, right? And they come home, they work another X number of hours. So,
Well, I'll give you an example. Like, we're asking our teachers to really look at the content. So each Ingenuity lesson starts out with an overview. So basically, it's just telling you about what you're going to be learning, your essential questions, your learning goals, things like that. Things that the teacher would traditionally be standing up and talking about. Well, now the child can access it right there. But you might have, like, I pulled up a lesson today, and one of the very beginning things was a vocabulary quadrant map, a fry map, which is basically a student would do it, and it would say, write the definition, use the word in a sentence, write a synonym, and draw a picture in this quadrant. Well, that's something that I might, as I'm teaching vocabulary, I might have done with my class, but they're still independently working on it on a sheet of paper. I'm not teaching them and standing over them and saying, okay, now quadrant one, let's fill it out. It was the same exact assignment as a vocabulary assignment within courseware. So I'm thinking that our teachers, as they look through courseware, they can see strategies, because the course is designed, it's designed using the strategic teaching model, the backwards design model, saying here's your outcomes and here are the learning goals. We've talked a lot of times about how we liked the program because it embedded instructional supports, like having games, having quizzes, having extra vocabulary supports, things like that a teacher might not actually do in the classroom normally, or might just say, okay, well, I'll do these for these students or for this student. But now they have access, every student has access. But I think it's just teachers looking at those assignments and saying, okay, for this part, for the hook, and you were talking about where I'm telling the stories or the fun little things, they've got a little video here of talking about Andrew Jackson. And when I show the video, I can show it to the whole group. It's like I've done a million times. Or the kids are sitting there watching it.
And all this is incorporated into
It's all in the program. It's not, one of the reasons, again, why we didn't want to go with schools PLP, the free state providers, because it was all PDF. It was, we've taken a textbook, we would copy things and put it in there. Very similar to what our digital textbooks are now. We wanted something that said, okay, at the beginning, I'm going to enact your prior knowledge. I'm going to give you a little quiz to see how much you know. If you don't know, then your teacher's going to give you a little bit more background knowledge, or it's going to take you to another assignment to give you a little bit more background knowledge. And so it's designed, it's very, it follows the strategic teaching model and backwards design. And so that was, as a classroom teacher, that's what I would do. I would go through, and then if I saw something, our math teachers are seeing this now. Our math teachers are saying, hey, that middle activity, our kids need a lot more to that. I'm going to have to do some background knowledge. I'm going to have to do some screencasts if I was teaching concepts that maybe they should learn in 6th grade but they didn't learn. And so I'm going to supplement this content. And that's what we're seeing our teachers doing.
At the middle school, tell me where we are, teachers being actively engaged.
Well, in all the classes I went in, even in our first week rolling out Ingenuity, what I saw were teachers up building relationships, or teachers saying, hey, on this math assessment that everybody failed, this is the part where everybody was doing poorly on. So let's all come back together, whole group. Let's talk this out. Let's figure this out. So, I mean, I saw teachers have been teaching ever since our first week of school in all of the classrooms that I've been in. Now, like you said, I mean, it is very much a balancing act, because what we don't want to have happen is that teachers spend the entire class period teaching, or, engaging with kids, which is exactly what they want to be doing. That's why they went into teaching, was to engage with kids. But we don't want that happening to the exclusion of, now this child has to go home when they're in tears because they have 8 hours worth of work to do in Ingenuity. So it is very much that balancing act, and what we're trying to train our teachers to do is to really kind of assess where our students' needs are. Some days they might need a little bit more time to get caught up in Ingenuity so that we don't have those panicked parents or those panicked kids going home at the end of the day. Other days, maybe we can take a little bit more time to engage a little bit more and do some of these activities that you would see in a traditional classroom. So I wouldn't say that we have it, 100% down pat. It's going to just take kind of day by day, week by week, going through and having teachers assess what is going to be best for my students today, where I can simultaneously keep them on track, but not, have the traditional experience become just a virtual experience as well.
And
Just
remember,
be
we-
mindful of, or just, I'm curious, because they're only there 2 days, right? That it seems like some of these things comes one day, then you don't hear anything the other day. So, I kind of wonder, are the teachers leaning on Ingenuity one day, and then the next day they're teaching?
That's a good point. A few teachers are employing that.
Right.
Like one day, it's like the Odell kind of thing, front loading or back loading. And then the next day, it's kind of a work day where they give individualized instruction around the room.
Right.
And others are finding that their group is more 50-50 within each class period where they have time. And so I asked for some feedback today on what strategies they're doing.
Yeah.
And it is split, and it seems to be by content area as to whether they feel that they need to provide instruction both days or one day and have a day work day. So
And we still have about 25 brand new teachers who, their internship program did not teach them how to teach in the pandemic. So they are learning how to teach. This is, for some of them, their very first experience in a classroom teaching, because remember, a lot of them, after March, they didn't finish their internship. And so we're having to provide support to teachers as well, teaching them through the process of teaching and on a hybrid schedule. And they're doing a great job. They really are. And they're very positive. But it's difficult.
Just look at that. And let's because it's just kind of strange. I'll get a complaint or something, but the next day I won't hear anything. And so in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe the teachers are, front loading. And so we get, okay, and it's the first day of the 2 days. And so you get these complaints. My kid went to this many classes and weren't engaged by a teacher. The next day you don't hear anything. And so, I'm not saying that's what, I just think that's something we got to look at, evaluate, and keep that in mind, especially as everyone, of course, wants what's best for their kid. And we do too. But that when there's nobody, if everyone's using one of those days to engage and the second day to teach, then that doesn't look, we probably need to figure out something around that.
One thing I think we learned at the middle school is that we have to be very clear in our expectations of the students when they're not in the classroom. Because I've heard lots of stories of students that when they're at the school, they're logged on, they're doing their thing, and then say they're there Monday and Tuesday. When you say through Sunday, they're like, oh, it's still like they didn't log in. So I think that's on us to communicate. We need to be logged in every day, and we talk about them following their schedule, even when they're not at school. So if I have math first period at 8 o'clock, I'm logged into that math class. And I think that was part of the pace thing too. That kids were engaged Monday, Tuesday, and the rest of the week they were not. And then when they log back home, they're way behind, and they're like, well, what just happened, And so then everybody, there's tears and all that stuff, and I get it, but I think that's something we have to communicate, that they have to be engaged every day, Monday through Friday.
That's an issue we're seeing with a lot of remote learners, is they're not even checking in at all. And of course, this goes back to the conversation about getting back to school, because honestly, some kids may not engage unless they're in school, unless they've got someone watching over them. Now, that's not true in every case. But, I heard a lot about.
Could I ask a quick question, please? I'm sorry. I was curious if in Ingenuity, if there was ever a situation where a teacher didn't have access to answers for a quiz, because my youngest, who's an 8th grader, early on, I don't know how it is now, was making 60s on some quizzes, and that's not his normal, score. So, and he told me that he was trying to learn, but that he couldn't find the answers, and they weren't being provided. So he wasn't getting anything out of the quizzes because he couldn't learn from them, because he wasn't being able to, find the right answers. Is that some access sometimes difficult for that?
Is access difficult for a teacher to access or for a student to access?
Well, yes. The teacher was where I was going.
Oh, yeah. So, and maybe that was just a matter of, training teachers on where to find all of the resources that were present in there. But yes, I mean, the teachers have access to all of the quiz questions. It's all part of a, kind of a quiz bank. So depending on which questions are pulled for individual quizzes may vary to where student to student, maybe they're not taking the exact same quiz or the exact same test. But no, teachers have access to the entirety of all of the possible test questions, all the possible quiz questions, and the answers for each of those. So it sounds like maybe that was just an issue of training our teachers for where to find some of those resources.
Thanks.
Yeah.
A couple more observations if I can. Again, trying to get a handle on this in my mind. I'm thinking of a couple of things. I remember once years ago, school I was in, we changed textbooks. We went from an archaic textbook to a really state-of-the-art, high-class grade textbook. Nobody knew what to do with it. And it took us, I mean, it sounds very similar to what we're talking about right here. Am I on the right track here?
Yes, exactly.
This is a souped-up textbook that we've got to learn how to use.
Yeah.
I also went back to when you talked about your new teachers, and I think it's important we understand exactly what we've asked our teachers to do. And I use a personal example mainly because that's what I know best. When I was finally able to teach AP history, I had the good fortune to go to a week-long seminar at Western Kentucky University, where a great teacher from Oak Ridge High School took our class under his wing and taught us how to be AP teachers. I was ready to go. I mean, I had everything that I needed. If I had not had the chance to have that prep work, if I would have had to go in cold to teach that AP course, I would have been lost. It would have taken me, I don't know, a semester to recover. And I think that's kind of what COVID has done to our teachers. And I mean, I'm just trying to get a handle on this. I mean, if we've been derelict in our duty, then I mean, we need to identify, we need to correct it. But I also think that it's important that we explain as accurate as we can exactly what we're dealing with right here. I don't know if that's a fair analogy or not, but it makes sense to me that some pre-training in how to teach in a worldwide pandemic would have been real helpful.
Right. No one has prepared you. They prepare you to teach some people have training on how to teach remotely. We've been trying to support our teachers in that, but no one has prepared us for teaching. If you have a student out for 12 days, a teacher out for 14 days, I'm having to cover another teacher's class because they're teaching, because they're out. No one has prepared you for the unique circumstances that comes with teaching in a pandemic.
And I think that's an extremely important point. And again, I go back to my personal experience. I mean, I was not a first-year teacher. I taught for a long time, but I was a 3-week teacher. I didn't have any idea how to teach this course. And I think that a lot of our teachers are running into the same situation. That we have a new textbook, lack of a better term, in a new situation that's never been done before. And I think those are important points that need to be considered.
Coach, may I say something to your point?
Please.
I have to say that, our teachers aren't running around the building at 3:15. I might be there at 6:30 in the morning or 6:20. Pelham High School parking lot is full of teachers getting there early, preparing, mentoring, working their tails off, and they're not trying to get out of there at 3:15. They're trying to find the way, and whatever that way is. All the time, if I go and need to speak with Miss Slade, she's working one-on-one with a teacher. If I go in Coach Tunnel's room, she's working with a teacher. Mr. McCarroll, we're all working with those teachers. And the new ones are looking at their mentors are working their tails off, trying to help those. We're all there. It's all hands on deck. It's the weekend. I can email or text a teacher at any point in time because I may get a parent email that, am I supposed to work on the weekend? No, but guess what? I love kids and I'm going to work. And those teachers will come back to me just like that. And they're trying to make sure they can provide because they understand the issues that our kids are having. And they want to do everything they can to make sure that opportunity is given to our students during this time because there is no playbook. We have nothing to go off of, just like Ms. Bogert said. But I just have to tell you guys, I mean, again, you come up to Pelham High School, and I'm sure I can speak for every student or every school in Pelham City Schools. Those teachers aren't just rolling in there at 7:45 and leaving at 3:15. They're there and they're working and they're learning and very much committed and dedicated to making this work. The best traditional, remote, staggered, whatever situation is thrown at us, we got it.
That's a good segue. So let's go to traditional. So, we talked about staggered, which is really our traditional kids that we've made half remote, which is, let's just face it. If it weren't for staggered, if we were just doing traditional and remote, it would be a little easier. But because we're in staggered, now that's created a few more issues, especially at the high school level. But when I talked to y'all, I said, okay, I'm looking at X date, bring everybody back. The middle school and high school's recommendation was a 4-day week for the secondary schools, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So why? I know you've already told me, but
Well, ultimately, what it comes down to is we don't have separate remote teachers who can only serve our remote kids and make sure that those kids are taken care of, or straight traditional teachers. What we have is a plan where every single teacher in both of our buildings has both a remote load of students that they're trying to make sure they're doing everything they need to for them, in addition to traditional students in front of them on, every single period except for the open period. So really what we kind of were going for with that Wednesday time built in was a time where we can still have some of those Google Meets where even our remote kids can get that face-to-face time with teachers because they're not coming traditionally at school ever. That's really the only face-to-face time that our remote kids will have with their teachers. In addition to making some of those screencasted videos, pulling different lessons and different resources that they can do when they see the kids, whether remote or traditional, are struggling with the material, doing a lot of that front loading. And there's still a tremendous amount of planning and still a tremendous amount of teacher work that has to go into, of course, even if we do have an Ingenuity component for it. So that's what that Wednesday time would be for, because we don't have separate remote and traditional teachers. So that builds in some time for planning. It gives them time to really focus on the remote kids on that Wednesday time, as well as do some front loading and some planning and make videos in addition to some of the videos and resources that we have in Ingenuity.
It also allows for those students to catch up, like you were talking about. Because just on the teacher side of it, that's perfect. That's exactly what the teachers need is that Wednesday. But also, when we're going 4 days a week, you're going to get teaching time like you want with the traditional kid, but that traditional kid's got to go home and catch up some. Well, Wednesday provides that e-learning day for them to get caught up to come back in on Thursday and be enriched some more and actually get, the Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton cabinet battle that they need, the extra, the good stuff.
one of our red flags that we heard was if I'm a remote kid, there was some discouragement because they're not getting any input from the teachers. But I think what y'all clearly told me is we can't be all things to all people. If we're going to come back to school 5 days a week, getting to our remote kids is going to continue to be a problem. And we have 40% of our kids that are in remote. So, is it the expectation if we do that and only go 4 days a week at the middle school and high school level that there will be more connections with those remote kids? And also, I remember we basically said that each period it is okay, and I know that this means that the teacher may not be engaged the full time with their current class, but each period, each day, every teacher is going to go in and clear the stoppages for the remote kids. So that helps basically unstick, I don't know, unstop, whatever the proper terminology here. It makes sure that every remote kid is able to move Monday and Tuesday. They get their feedback on Wednesday, so forth. So am I correct?
So on Wednesday for the traditional, there will not be new assignments that day?
Well, the way Ingenuity works is you set a start date and end date. And so all Ingenuity does is it puts these dates next to the task, and those are recommendations for the student to kind of know what they need to kind of hit so that they finish on time. But it's not like a traditional assignment where it's like, this is a new assignment, but yes, that date will be there. But it's kind of I heard a lot of parents talking about that where it's like, well, you're giving me another assignment. All really what's happening is it's just showing a date recommendation for them to stay on track. So it may be perceived as a new assignment, but it's just another day in progression.
Well, and that's where we've really had to encourage our students and our parents to look on Google Classroom, because every teacher, especially with an Ingenuity course in the Google Classroom, they're posting weekly agendas. So teachers are saying, okay, across the entire week, what are the different lessons and assignments that we need to have completed by the end of this week? So there is some flexibility in some of those cases with, a student can work ahead on, some of their virtual days, or, as we've seen, some of our students sometimes fall behind in those virtual days. But that's where we really encourage families to look at the weekly agenda, because yes, our program is maybe going to pace students in a certain way and maybe have these deadlines and things like that. But ultimately, the teacher is the one who's responsible, saying, this is the work that we need to accomplish this week. As long as you're on track with what the teacher is pacing that student with, that student is on pace. So I think it's just a matter of kind of really focusing on, trusting that weekly agenda that's there, because that does supersede the pacing that's in Ingenuity.
You're not penalized for missing it, like if it's today's assignment and you didn't do it today, your grade is not penalized for it in Ingenuity.
So if you're in the red on 3 classes, you're not penalized.
I hope not, because my niece was.
Good. House.
To your point, we've collaborated with the middle school to come up with some guidelines, some expectations that we wanted to share with our teachers, as well as our students, as well as our parents. So everybody kind of understands what the expectation is during your e-learning day on Wednesday. And I think that kind of, we worked really hard to make sure that we could develop something. I think that you guys probably have it in your packet from Dr. Cofield, but we have something that we'd like to push out and share with our parents so that they understand, hey, this is what we're expecting your student to do. This is what you expect your teacher to do. This is what we we hope that you guys as parents would help us do, so that it's all just a seamless transition as we continue to go through that. And I think having those expectations and those guidelines, per se, best practices, will also help us help the students.
Yeah. I want to go over those before we finish, but I don't want the elementary schools to get out of here unscathed. And I do think that we have had more issues at the secondary level because it is more cumbersome, because we don't have dedicated remote teachers. And just, everybody remembers at the elementary level, you have a 2nd grade teacher or a 3rd grade teacher. Well, at the high school, one teacher may teach multiple courses, and so to dedicate just a remote teacher for a course was almost impossible. So that was really the only route that we had. So at the elementary level, it's not been as, I guess, difficult. Doesn't mean it's been difficult, but we've not had quite as many issues. So in the staggered schedule, I know that it seems like K through 2 has gone pretty good. It seems like that we've had the 3 through 5 courseware, again, is pretty rigorous. What are we doing there? What are we doing to help? What's going on with the rigorous courseware in grades 3 through 5?
Are you speaking to the remote students or the traditional students?
Well, the remote, yes.
Okay, so
you tell me what I'm speaking to.
So for courseware, we have for Odyssey-ware, we have it's helped us having those dedicated remote teachers. So at most schools, we've got a dedicated remote teacher at every single grade level. And in 3 through 5 is where we really utilize the Odyssey-ware platform. And that's really helped, because our heaviest loads of remote students are in those 3rd to 5th grade levels. So having that kind of guide the teachers and guide the students has been very helpful. And the way we put that out there to the parents and students is that it's more self-paced. And that's been a benefit to some of our students who want to kind of get ahead a little more. They've been able to do that. And then at the same time, for students who need a little more time, they've had that. But having the dedicated teachers for those grade levels, that they've been able to go through and work out those problems throughout the school day. The teachers, day for the most part, looks like they are calling parents, or parents are calling in, they're answering emails, they're clearing those stoppages. They're really kind of, they're problem solving and being IT at the same time throughout the school day. But because we have those dedicated people, we're able to resolve these problems pretty quickly.
The only thing I'd like to add is the teachers are looking forward to see what the content's gonna be. And if there's a PD or a brain pop activity or something like that, to kind of front load, because they can't be everything to everybody, but they are trying to provide some basic background knowledge so the kids will be successful with the content, because it is difficult.
And just so the board knows, we, at the elementary level, not really doing this before, but we did pile a lot more kids on the remote teachers so that the traditional classroom teachers, we could reduce the sizes in those classrooms. And that varies a little bit typically. You know, when this pops in my head with a remote teacher, they typically have a load of about 2.5 to 3 times more than a traditional teacher. But I think it all kind of depends on what you're using. And I think those are things that we're kind of evaluating. Has that been a struggle? Did we miss that a whole lot? Are we finding out that we think the numbers are pretty solid on what we assign to remote teachers? Or
I think they've been pretty good. We get kind of close to having a lot when we get to 4th and 5th grade. But kindergarten through 2nd grade, our numbers are really good. It's about 25 to 35. And when we look at 3rd through 5th grade, it's more of the 40, 35 to 55 range. So it just depends on the grade level. But as the students are getting older, getting a little more independent, the parents are a little more comfortable with the remote student.
Mine are higher than that.
Yeah.
My 3rd grade's got 68, some of my kids on there. 2,000, that's very good.
What have y'all?
Interactive with students?
Yes, they are doing at least weekly Google Meets. They're trying to troubleshoot, as we mentioned.
They have an open Google Meet, so like they've broken them, like my 3rd grade teacher, she broke them into 4 groups. So she has the daily time, so if you're in that group, because your time slot. So they have a tutor, so to speak, and then they are broken up into 4 groups meeting during the week.
So your traditional students, are they using Odyssey-ware in the classroom?
Well, they've been using it some for science and social studies, shooting some. We were just talking about that today. But for the most part, they're using Google Classroom on those days when they're not there. There's not content through Google Classroom.
When they're at school, we're doubling up with reading and math, doing questions.
So they're there 2 days a week. I'm gonna clarify that. They're there 2 days a week. So the 2 days they're there, we're pushing reading and math.
Yeah.
And so when they're home, we're asking them to do science and social studies in the
We
software.
had never intended to use Odyssey-ware for traditional students. That was going to be solely remote. And then when we switched to staggered, because they weren't there 3 days and they needed a remote platform,
We had to make a choice, right?
we did at that moment.
And we felt the choice was to teach reading and math.
Yes.
And that's a great idea. But when we go back to, once this is over, we actually go to 5 days, or maybe not over, but better. When we go back to 5 days, let's just say that and be optimistic. Will they still be using Odyssey-ware if they're traditional?
My expectation for traditional would be that they would continue teaching traditional, and they would revert back to their integrated science, revert back to their social studies, Harcourt social studies books. And they would not be using Odyssey-ware, but it would be a resource in case we had a teacher who was on an extended leave, and in an emergency situation. And that was the way we had designed it from the beginning. But staggered put a little peek at it.
And that's been my expectation for the whole system.
Yes. And I mean, we can easily, I think, adapt that to happen at the elementary level. That's what we want to do.
They all have triage plans. And I think what you would see if you had an elementary teacher out for an extended period of time is some effort to make sure they were getting reading and math instruction, but you might see solely dependent Odyssey-ware or science and social studies. I mean, it's a matter of
Literally until we come back.
balancing that.
Yes, as long as we're still out, we'll have to have a remote program, or otherwise their traditional teachers will be doing reading and math and creating online content for the remote learners. So since we have an online content that's aligned with their standards, we wanted just to use that.
board members, I did make a mistake on your second page of your handout under remote. I said Wednesdays under elementary, that under remote, about the third bullet down there, it's got the whole Wednesdays. That was just copied and pasted. Elementary level, so let's talk about traditional. So we just started getting in a little bit of traditional. The recommendation would be to go back to elementary school 5 days a week. So that what you read there on Wednesdays was just, I didn't eliminate that. But in our conversations, we saw no reason, because we do have remote teachers, we saw no reason to go to a 4-day schedule, that we would go back to the elementary level 5 days a week. Any issues or heartburn with that?
And I just have one comment, really. We hear a lot as a board from parents, and I'm so thankful that you guys are here and we can hear from the admin. And it's unfortunate to me that we don't get to hear directly from teachers a lot of times, at least as much as I would like to. And curious what their thoughts are on going back 5 days, on not going back 5 days, on how they feel safety wise, all of the above, really.
I can speak to some of that. I think I'll speak for myself, but I know there are some concerns about it. And one of the concerns being, like you mentioned, safety, that even beyond that, if we lose the 6:15 rule, so if we come back, that's gone in elementary school. So it's no longer possible. And so what we could see right now, we've got some consistency. It may not, is it the best thing? We'd love to have everybody back all 5 days. But as soon as we get all the kids back in the classroom, and we've got 15 to 20 something kids in the classroom, the 6-foot rule is out the window. So what we could see is rolling absences from students, which was what we had originally talked about this summer. And the rolling absences could cause some inconsistent, I don't see inconsistent learning, but inconsistent method of learning for the students. Because right now they know they get 2 days or 3 days, and it's fairly consistent. But if we've had any sickness or symptoms or anything like that, it's not affecting anybody else. But as soon as we lose that distance, it does start affecting other kids in the room. So there are some concerns with that.
Not just with teachers. There's some concerns.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll speak to that, Angie. I think that our teachers are no different than our entire population. You're going to have some that aren't even going to think twice about it, are going to do that. I'm not saying that they're any better or any more, whatever. And then you'll have some that they're going to be cautious. They're a little concerned, but they're not. And then you're going to have some who, are probably going to have concerns because of their life experience and whatever it is. And so, that's a very difficult call, and it's the balancing act that we face. But also knowing that we know, Norfolk's talking about remote kids overall, but we know that some kids do well in remote, but a lot of kids don't. And we know that we still have a lot of remote kids that haven't even logged on or touched anything. Am I right? And so, if we stay in this, at some point in time, if we don't attempt to get back to what we know, we're going to have kids who are going to fall further and further behind. And it's something that I struggle with daily. But also, I hear the stress. I also see some of the other aspects of health not related to COVID. The mental, the stress that I read between the lines of the emails, and there are issues, the interaction with kids, and so it is a real balancing act that we are going to have to try to undertake here. But I also think that's the reason we have to look at the data, and although some would say, yeah, but that's not really possible. But we're not ever going to ask our teachers to violate the 6:15 rule. They're the classroom teacher. Their classrooms can be set up. The teacher can teach where they can maintain 615. For the parents who choose to send their kids to school, though, there is no question that the 615 rule is going to be violated. Just like if you're on the bus, the 615 rule is going to be violated. If you choose to participate in extracurricular activities like band and volleyball and football and other things, it's going to be violated. But parents are at least getting a choice. Some of our kids will do great with remote learning. But if the numbers related to the COVID data don't allow us to ever come back, then we'll deal with that. But there will be kids who will not ever, they've already lost last spring. And, I just worry that we're going to have kids who maybe don't have the support at home, who need our teachers. They need each other. They need the student interaction. They need some of these things. At some point in time, if the numbers are doable, then that's just, we're going to ask our teachers to be heroes and do these things.
And I've been saying that from the get-go is that even if not for the education, but for the social and well-being of our kids, they need to be in school.
Yeah.
As soon as it's safe,
Right.
as soon as possible.
No, I agree.
Well, it should be noted also because I personally struggle with this a lot because I'm very concerned. I mean, all these things that we've heard tonight from what our teachers have done, I mean, it hasn't been done in a vacuum. I mean, that virus is every bit as prevalent in their life as it is in our children's lives. And sometimes that's lost. And the fact that our teachers recognize that the damage that is being done to children because they can't get back in school, the fact that they recognize and they're willing to toe that line every day when we make that decision about school, I think it's something that this community should recognize and frankly should praise. I mean, that doesn't mean that if things are wrong and people aren't teaching all those things that we've heard about, that they shouldn't be addressed, they must be corrected. But there's another shoe on another foot too, and that needs to be stated as well too. And some of our people that seem to want to get on social media get a little emotional. Just kind of bear with me. It would serve this community well if that statement was made, as well as some of the others that have been made. Because the men and women that are doing this on a daily basis, again, it is not being done in a vacuum. And it is not being done with absolutely no risk to them at all. And it should be recognized.
You're right.
The remote learners, board members, on the last couple of pages, another thing that was discussed from all the administration, and all these are different. The elementary level has theirs, the middle school has theirs, and the high school, it was kind of massive. So I tried to kind of organize them. But the one thing that I kept hearing from all of y'all is we've got to build in some structure for our remote learners. And I think on these pages, y'all, sometimes we hear from parents about, okay, my remote, I'm not getting enough. So here's the reality, though, that we need to very clearly say is that if you choose to be remote, you're going to have to be willing to take on some things as a parent. You're going to have to make sure that your student is getting on. Y'all can, sometimes we hear complaints, we go check how many hours the kids, and they're very minimal. Now, could there be stoppages? I think we've got all those things corrected. So there's got to be some structure at home. Parents are going to have to oversee that. And especially at the elementary level, basically, if your family is not in a situation where you can provide monitoring and support for your kids, remote's probably not the best choice. As we work through this, in the couple of weeks, we would love, and I'm just being very honest, we would love to be all things to all people and be able to provide a great and just top of the line remote. But now the honest truth is that if at home the parents aren't there to support it and monitor it and help support, it's probably not their best choice. And that's just being honest, because we're not going to sit up here and say, all these things that they're doing are great, but it's probably not as good as what they would get in a traditional classroom. And so parents need to understand that. There's nothing wrong with being honest about that. But as a parent at the elementary level, you feel that that's what you want your kid to be is remote, and you've got the time and the ability to support your kid and to communicate with the teacher once a week or a couple and still support that, that's probably what that's going to look like. So we want to be very clear about that moving forward. As we make any future announcements about what we do, we're going to try to really clarify that for people, because we want them, not to think that there's going to be this level of stuff going on where maybe, there's this level of stuff, and I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. But so I want to go on a couple of more things that I think are important, because anytime there's something new, we all understand change. I talk about the wave crashing on the beach, right? Crashes on the beach, slowly reside, goes back, things calm down. But the teacher part, and because I've been asked, are there not other, what are other people doing? Now, from my perspective, I talk to the other superintendents. I know everybody else is struggling with this or that, and different people have chose different paths to do things. Do we have any teachers who are coming up and saying, this school system or this school is doing it this way, and we really need to? Is there anybody that we need to be looking at, or is anybody bringing things to your attention that we need to be talking about or looking at, or your teachers? I'm not getting it. The teachers aren't sending me stuff. Tell me where we are with that, as far as, because we'll steal anything, right? If it's good, we'll go get it. How are your teachers feeling about what we're doing?
Well, I can honestly say that we've had really positive feedback, and I really do believe that a lot of that was because we did it on the front end by bringing our leadership team in and getting their feelings from the get-go. But as we've moved on, I've really, and you guys, please, Ms. Touchtone and Ms. Slay, you guys, Ms. Bogert, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had teachers that have been like, thank you. They're hearing from other teachers that are their friends in different systems, and they're saying, y'all are doing it right. And their biggest concern, from what I've been hearing, is they're glad to know that if something were to happen to them, if they had to quarantine or if they had to be out, they know that their students are still learning. And it's just not to stick this other sub in there, you just sit there and do worksheets. There's still the ability for them to continue on, so we can continue some sort of pacing. Is it what we want? Is it the perfect scenario? No, but we know teaching and learning is still going on, and that's what our folks, you guys, please, that's what they've been saying to me in the times that I've been in their classrooms, because we've asked them.
What about the Mills, Kevin?
Well, I've heard things that other school systems are doing that they've heard about that are bad. And so our response has been positive too, that what we're doing with ATO is better than what some of the other systems are doing. And these are people that have a spouse that teaches in a different system, or they have students that their kid goes to a different system, and they're positive about what we're doing as compared to what they're doing. So our response is very positive as well.
What parents? So getting input from parents and making sure we're being sensitive. Are you getting a lot of parent communications at the school level? Tell me how we're resolving some of these parent things. So I'm talking to the principals now.
So the very first weekend when everything just the first week everything kind of blew up, I know I had 65 emails from parents with concerns, and every one of them were valid. I shared it with our admin team, our counselors. We worked together to try to resolve it. A lot of it was the pacing, it was the work, it was all the things Ms. Bogert, Ms. Slay, Ms. Touchdown were talking about. And I think over the second week, so I will have to say, I said in our little paper update for our folks that week 2 is better than week 1. Week 3 is going to be better than week 2. And if you have to gauge the amount of emails that I received from the very first weekend, I received 0 this past weekend. And so I think
Lock is in curfew.
that's not to say that there's still not concerns. I'm just saying, I think that at the very beginning, it was just, kind of like the ice bucket challenge or whatever Coach T was talking about. I think it was just a shock. And I think we're addressing concerns and we're listening to our parents, but we're also listening to our students and our teachers as well. So some of the same concerns that our parents are having,
our teachers have brought to us or our students have brought to us, and then we're still trying to figure out how we address those. And I feel like we've done a really good job doing that. That's not to say that there's still nothing to, and we're always going to adjust. We're going to do what's best for kids. But as of right now, in comparison to that weekend, this weekend, I can just speak for the high school on that.
And you have a student leadership team that you speak with too this year?
Well, we're trying to figure out all of our other leadership team because we don't have them on the same day. So this has been quite a challenge to get all of our kids and figure out how we can get them involved on the different days. So
So I think that speaks to a lot of the, even with parent communications, because we have, all the schools have, parent committees and student committees and green and gold. And all of a sudden, since March, we've really not been able to do those things because we've not had the kids there. So that has thrown a huge kink into what we normally do.
especially green and gold, I mean, that was our go-to. I mean, we had advisory, we can't do advisory because the numbers are astronomical in the advisory. So, in order to keep them socially distanced, we got to keep them. So, we basically had to do away with advisory and try to figure out other ways that we can get with our students to be able to get them the information that they need. So we're trying to be as creative as we can during this staggered schedule because we don't have them all the time. And I don't want to have a student leadership team. Okay, if you're A through L, you can be a leader, but M through Z, you can't be. So we have to figure out that, and we're working on that because we know it's important.
We're working on that with our SGA. We've got some new ideas coming, and we're trying to get our feet under us with the academic part before we can get our SGA going, because we didn't even get to have elections in the spring. So that has been, and we want that to become more like our principals advisory committee. We want to put that more through the government and our school, but we got to get those elections in. So we're trying to figure out who will form and how we do it so that it'll be equitable to remote and whatever. But maybe this, when we do get to go back, if we get to go back to the traditional school, we can get that underway and really use those kids to become leaders, which is what we want anyway. I miss the kids.
Yeah.
I'm not doing well because I want the kids. That's the fun part of the job for me.
About the parents of the middle school.
I think it is slowing down some. Of course, we have one pending right now. And it's the same thing. It's about the pace, about the teacher time. We're hearing the same thing. And are we perfect yet? Absolutely not. So those are things that we're still working on. When we hear, it's not all the time with that pace and taking things out that, maybe they're spending too much time on. So we're hearing the same things. I think it's getting less and less. But it seems like every issue is the same kind of thing. And they're valid stuff. So, it's just on us to make those corrections.
Elementary.
I think at first, we had a lot more issues just getting started. I know for me, some of it was trying to balance the green goal levels. We could have that space in the classroom. We got that worked out. Since then, we've had a couple of complaints revolving around remote. We got a lot of those resolved. Now that that's really moving and going, parents know how it works. Most of that's gone completely away, and we've been able to solve any of the problems that have popped up, but it's died down recently.
Anything to add to that, Lisa?
Nope.
I do think that students being back in the building would help a lot of our problems. I mean, I know that there's issues with all that, but I think the more they're there, the better.
Because a lot of our issues come from remote.
Right. Well, and a lot of our issues are coming from traditional kids that are not, they're only there 2 days a week.
Well,
And they're remote the rest of the time.
No, I got it.
So,
Yeah, I kind of lump those into remote too, because our traditional kids are remote kids half the time.
right.
Sure. With all this that's been said and all this, back to Ingenuity. I mean, you still feel good about that selection? I mean, was that the program that we need? I mean, what? I know we talked about this in that, but just briefly, why did we choose that?
We selected that because when we first looked at the product that the state of Alabama had provided as a free resource, and we did not feel like it matched our standards was. It was aligned, truly aligned to standards, especially it was a superficial alignment of the standards. So we just did not feel that it would help, especially I was looking at the early elementary phonics progression for an example, and I didn't feel like we didn't spend enough time on foundational skills that our students needed. When we looked at some of the math and some of the other courses, it was, like I said, it was a PDF of a textbook. Well, since, we didn't go with that product, the state provided Schoology as the learning management system, and then all of a sudden we heard, oh, wait, Schools PLP doesn't go into Schoology. And so there have been a lot of issues with that as well. And so we went with a program that we were used to using, that we had seen great success with, that had those instructional supports in there, that was aligned with both state and national standards, that was a recommended product. That also we have students who transfer from school to school. So what are our surrounding areas doing? And during this 3-week, Derek mentioned it, the panic time, things were changing day by day. I'm part of a curriculum team that is comprised of members from all of our surrounding areas. And people were saying, we can't use Schools PLP. We're going to use Ingenuity, or we're going to use teacher created content. We really wanted to use Access content because we had used Access before. We had seen a lot of success with that. But then the state said, oh, by the way, you will only have so many licenses to Access. And so we could have some students using Access and some not using Access. And so we went with a product that we felt like it most aligned with what our teachers were currently teaching and the standards that we needed to have our students to be successful. We've had teachers commit the products. We've had our instruction coaches to look at products. It wasn't a knee-jerk decision. We mulled it over back and forth, teams looking at the products and look at some other things as well. We've used other products. We've used A+ in the past. We used Grad Point in the past, but nothing met the alignment of the standards and have the true assessments that we felt matched our accountability standards and the ACT as this program. And then too, we looked at parent feedback. We've gotten parent feedback from the spring that said, hey, this work is too easy. And when we looked at Schools PLP, our team pulled up and we said, this is a joke. We cannot show this to have our students looking at this. And we've seen, so ironically, I go on social media and I look at different schools and what people are saying about online learning from different schools. And not too long ago, I pulled like 30 different posts. And I said, look at this post. And they were reading it and they thought it was from there was some describing the same issues we have in Pelham, but it was from 3 different districts. So people are all having these same issues right now because no one has ever taught in a pandemic. This is brand new to everyone. And the pacing issues are things that we didn't even think about, but we thought, well, heck, when you have students who are missing for not just one day. When I taught as a classroom teacher, I had a student out a day with a stomach bug. Well, I just give them a packet of work or just assign them something online that they had done in one day. But now you're having to do 14 days of content or 12 days of content. So we wanted the continuity.
I have a question. You've mentioned this several times over the last few weeks, and it's Screencastify. Mm-hmm. Is that, maybe describe it to me, is it videoing the teacher's lecture or is it videoing what's on the board? Is that something we could use, say, like an example one of you gave where in math, everybody did that on a section. And so in their in-class time, the teacher was able to go over that. Is that something we could Screencastify and put on, say, Google Classroom for that class for all the students, even the ones that are at home those 2 days, could see that instruction?
That's what that's exactly what the teachers are doing.
They have to do that today.
But to build that library of Screencastify things, I mean,
I'm not saying the library, I'm saying as we go and things come up.
That's what I'm talking about. I
But
mean,
that takes time to go in and create those things with the instruction that you're looking at. That's a whole separate time of that teacher pulling out the measures.
here's what I would say, that we're going to be really well prepared for the second pandemic.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we should never throw these things away, right?
So Screencastify is not something you can do spur of the
not
moment.
live. It's not live. It's a Chrome extension that teachers have downloaded. I know 3 of our schools have already, it's free,
basically you have up to 5 minutes free recording that you can do. It was something that a lot of our teachers over the spring shutdown utilized because that was a fast way that we could record quickly if you needed to. I know that our schools, 3 of our schools have purchased a full license so that they do have the ability to record longer than that 5 minutes, but it's a planned recording of something, like it's not a live feed for something. It is where the teacher is able to share what's on their screen or directly record a lesson or a lecture, something like that, like a mini lesson kind of with what they're doing that then can be posted to Google Classroom or something like that.
So there's not any platform we could use at this time that would be a live, hey, this has come up, let me just hit the button and say, and then I'll post it to Google for everybody.
Not if you're wanting people to be able to go back and utilize that as a resource to then have later. If you're in the moment of teaching that, that can become distracting to have other voices and things that you can't hear in the background there. When a teacher sits down to take dedicated time, I'm going to need to front load this content for my middle school, 7th grade science class because I know this is what's coming. That's dedicated time. They're going to sit down with content or whatever they've got pulled up to be able to talk through. It's not just let me just do this real fast. It can be done quickly if you're needing to make something short, or for what I think you're wanting or what you're asking. That's a whole separate kind of curated, kind of created thing that the teachers would do.
They'd have to do that in their after work hours.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
They could create that 10-minute, 5 to 10 minute video.
Well, by Wednesday, we may be 3 sections down the road, but yeah, I was just hoping for something a little more real time.
Finishing up the parent aspect. So, I typically meet with parents once a year. Or Beverly Hills, we put together a group. We did that at Ellen Ridge 2 years ago, I think middle school before that, and then over here the year before that, last year, because of whatever, we didn't get that in. So I know as we get back to a normal routine and get people in, I know that y'all will continue to pick up with your parent committees and get input and other things. But just know, y'all know that, but I'm going to say this publicly, I can't solve anybody's problem, right? If they have a problem at the school, I'm not going to be solving that. Y'all are the people that can solve their problems, not me. It's you and the teacher. And so y'all know that if I get an email that I'm pushing that down to you, and y'all always handle those things and just continue to do so. And help people the best that you can help them and explain the best that you can help them. I know you will. But the more we can get of that, y'all can fix their problems. Nobody up here can fix their problems. Only y'all can fix their problems. So,
because that's the other group that's working under tremendous pressure right now. I mean, their parents are up against it. I mean, just like everybody else is. And we're all. That's the bottom line. And we have to work together.
I have a question. Were we always planning on using the courseware with the traditional? Was that always the intent?
No.
we did not go there until the 6 foot. So we were on a completely different path when we thought we could mask up and put everybody in the classrooms, because pretty much it was going to be traditional teaching. And then we were in the process of figuring out remote. But when they came out and said the quarantine are going to apply if you're within 6 feet, no matter the mask, all of a sudden that completely changed the game for us because of the mass number of quarantines that we knew were coming. And our numbers y'all seen our numbers, they've doubled. We've been in school 2 weeks, and prior to school starting, we had 14 people, staff and students, under quarantine. After 1 week, we had 29. After 2 weeks, we had 58. Double. We know that this is coming. I mean, there is no way around knowing that when we come back to school and we can't maintain the 615 rule with our students, that the number of quarantines will pick up. And we also know that the number of quarantines with our teachers will pick up. So we began to have this conversation about, oh, wait a minute. How are we going to continue educating all the third graders if two of the third grade teachers are out for 2 weeks? And how are we going to continue to educate the 11th grade chemistry kids when the chemistry teacher is out? And what if half the chemistry course kids are out? Are we going to ask the teacher to, so we got into all these conversations, which is when it came from the school level back to us is, can we consider a consistent approach so that our teachers can manage basically, especially at the secondary level? So that is really, I think that was the end of June. That's when I came back to the board and said, can we move the start of school back? We were planning on starting August the, I can't remember, 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that. We said, we got to move school back. We tried to give, that's when everybody was working 12 or 14-hour days. We were trying to, respend the thing into something that we thought would be doable in the current environment that we have. And that's kind of where we are. And what they've said to me is with all these issues is we really just can't afford to move away from it at this point in time. Now, if we go back to school and the vaccine comes out and everybody, there's got to be a point in time where we got to go back to, the way we always do things. Unless we can figure this out and it becomes great, we blow everything out of the water, those kinds of things. So that's what really changed the game for us, made us shift gears.
I understand that. I think that everyone has done such a tremendous job. It's, and I know gotten a lot of heat as well. So I really commend everyone for doing that. But as we look forward to going to a more regular look of school, have we considered what we would do to try to mitigate or minimize the possibility of spread of the virus, such as, and I think I mentioned this to some of the board members, if, to decrease the possibility of a larger class size, maybe splitting a class, sending some kids to the auditorium to listen in remotely with headphones or whatever on their Chromebook. If we were able to video the teacher, if we were able to get teacher in some sort of live mode or camera mode, has there been any thought of that, or are we just going to go all in?
Well, I kind of like to think of it like this. If you're gonna pick a horse to ride across the country, you get changing terrain everywhere you go. That's kind of where we are. It keeps changing. We picked, I think, the best horse we could pick. It wasn't the fastest horse. It wasn't the most elite horse. It was the sturdy, let's keep going. You can either do the work on the front end or the back end. We chose to do the work on the front end by keeping our students, both remote and traditional, somewhat on the same pace and together. And also be able to use Ingenuity in case those, like we said, the teacher goes out, the chemistry teacher, like Dr. Cooperville spoke of. Ingenuity was the only thing that stayed constant in that changing terrain. That's the horse we can ride to make it across the whole, the Rockies and the rivers and the whatever we cross, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I think that,
And
go ahead.
once we get through with that, we all want to go back to traditional. We want to teach, our teachers want to teach.
But I do think that is our next hurdle to begin to think about, because I mean this, something none of us are talking about is this is a huge HR issue too, related to HR issues. And so we've analyzed all of our numbers that turned into me, how many green, how many gold. I think we're actually in pretty good shape. I've got the numbers somewhere. I think 44% of our, even if we came back to traditional, 44% of our classes are still below 12 because of the number of remote students.
Okay.
What we still don't know, though, is if we make the announcement that we're coming back, will we have more parents and kids that decide to go remote? We don't know, because they can opt out anytime. We don't know how those are changing. But we also know the percentages, I'm sorry, that one stuck out for me, but We also have a percentage where we know that we have 20 or more students, which in a normal situation would be great. But we can't get 6 feet apart unless we have about a dozen kids in the classroom. Now, fortunately for us, we don't have any classrooms that have over 24 kids. We had some, but they've made some adjustments. So the majority of our classes are somewhere between that 12 and 20, which is more manageable, but it still doesn't do the 615 rule. So 615 rule. So Sharon, I think that is something that we've kind of thrown out there, but to be honest with you, their hair is on fire with this other stuff. And when we start coming back and we begin to have maybe some teacher concerns or issues related to that, we're going to have to start thinking along those lines. We just haven't got to that point yet.
But there are going to still be safety measures in place, and we're still going to go mask.
Oh, yeah.
Mask to mask, but we're going to keep them one way always, right? All that.
I have one more thing about Ingenuity before we move on.
Sure.
And maybe you've already considered this or are planning this, but I would really, really like to see some parent training on Ingenuity, even if it's via Zoom, maybe at different times, and even one done in a Spanish platform to maybe engage those that aren't logging in at all. But some real training on Ingenuity for parents. I know for me, I've struggled, like in English, to find the actual story. I see piece parts, and then every now and then a slide will come through and I'll see a link to the actual story, but before that, I don't know how to find it. So if we could do some parent training, even remotely, that would be fantastic.
Well, and we actually, Nicole is finalizing our parent form that we're about to send out. So we already do have some, we mentioned that parent resource. We do have some how-to videos and specific things on there. But what we really need from parents, and what we've been doing is we get questions from parents on specific things. We've been adding different things to that parent resource page. But we're going to send a survey out to parents, and it's going to ask your school, your specific grade level, what content platform you have, and specific questions. And then our plan is to do a bite-sized PD where we will make videos answering the parents' questions and basically having a video library of answers to those questions. And so then we hope to roll those out on social media, our website, in that parent platform, but so parents will have specific answers to the questions they have. And I'd also like to mention, whatever platform you use, and I mentioned other schools using other content areas, they just didn't meet our needs. They might be meeting the needs of other schools, and I know that other schools are doing exactly what we're doing when they're using schools PLP or A+ or whatever they're using. They're having to adapt and make that fit the needs of their schools. It just happens to be that Ingenuity met a lot of our goals for our particular district.
All right, so before I move on to going back to our timeline and what we're going to do as far as reopening schools and those kind of things, are there any red flag issues that we have not addressed tonight that the board would like to hear from? I think I've tried to touch on all of them. Or any of you folks, is there something that's on your chest that you meant to say and you've not had an opportunity to say anything? All right, so board members, just to have the conversation one more time after my conversations with everyone last week, and every time I get nervous, I go find out, and when I hear and they explain, I always feel a little better. I know that we have work to do. We absolutely have got to make sure our teachers are being engaged in the classrooms. We know that, but also we got to be fair to them and give them opportunities. We know, I'm summarizing here, we know that every day at the secondary level, the teachers are going to go in there every period and clear those stoppages for those remote learners. We go the 4-day week. That's going to be that one day where we're saying to parents, this is our best opportunity here is for you to engage. But we also know that remote learning is a choice that parents are choosing and that they're going to have to be able to support that somewhat at the home level. They've got to help us monitor that. Still, nothing beats sending your kid to school, but we get that parents have concerns and we understand that. So again, we are tracking the numbers very closely. I am I wasn't smart enough to create the tables. Some of our people did that. Some of our technology people, y'all can probably guess the guy that did it, but he put together this really fancy tables, and Julie loads of information every day. When we talk to other people to try to find out, I call and say, well, how many kids? Well, I don't know. I have to, talk to the nurse, and the nurse has to get the sheets from every school, and ours is active, it's ongoing. It's updated daily. We know as much as you can possibly know about what our numbers are. And right now, I am comfortable with our numbers, not so much at the high school. They are really, really borderline on the number of quarantines that we have right now. It's low, 4.9% after today, but we kind of said, okay, if we can stay below 5%, we need to feel comfortable. Now, there's a situation with a large number of kids quarantined at one time, and they will be rolling off, and I know they'll be rolling off, so I have to consider that as well. But
So when you say 5%, you're talking about quarantines and
quarantine,
positives,
yes,
not just positives.
that's not just positive, right? But that keeps us, and I also have to look at staff too, and fortunately, so far, we've not had any issue with bus drivers, which has been a blessing because I hadn't really given y'all this information, but I talked with teachers about, we're running about 50% of what we normally run with our buses. So we're running about 1,200 kids a day. We typically run 2,300 to 2,400 kids. So the parents, either we do the remote kids or the parents are taking their kids to school. But yes, I'm talking about quarantine because that impacts the amount of instruction that we have to provide to everybody. COVID is an issue. I get being COVID positive is an issue, but the number of people quarantines impacts what we do on a daily basis. How we respond to instruction and transportation and feeding kids. It doesn't really matter if they're COVID or if they're just quarantined. They're not here, and we have to make adjustments. So that is the number that we're looking at. We're much lower than that in positive cases, but if our numbers, I'm not going to say about the high school because I'm just going to have to let the data make the decision as we go through the week. But I will be prepared. I think I'm comfortable with the 4-day week at the secondary level because I see that it's going. One of the red flags with remote parents was, our teachers aren't getting enough of the teachers. Well, we can't ask our teachers to be all things to all people, and maybe that provides a way that they can spend some time with their remote kids. So that's kind of my plan, is to make a decision this Friday based on the data and try to put our people back in school on what Monday is, that the 21st, I think, which would give them parents a week and a half to plan. It would be a 4-day week at the secondary schools, middle and high school, and a 5-day week at the elementary school. Now, I know as board members, we're just like the public. There are probably some that, think we need to move faster than that. There may be some think we need to be more cautious. I'm willing. If this whole board says, Scott, we need to wait another week before we do that, or I'm certainly willing to listen. I'm just letting you know, that I've got to make a decision on Friday, and that's kind of where my head is right now. So any major heartburn from the board about that?
I just think we need to let the numbers drive us. I mean, I think we've got sound guidelines and go from there.
And I agree. I think we need to let the numbers drive us, but that leads me to a question for Nurse Julie, and you probably won't know the answer, but I'm gonna ask anyway. At what point will we be able to, as a school system, treat this virus like we do the flu, where if you're sick, you go home. If you're not, you stay?
It would be very nice if we could do that now.
Yes.
Because from what I've seen in talking to parents, and it's different for everybody. I'm trying to minimize the effect that COVID has on some people. But from what we've seen in the school setting, what I've seen is that it kind of mimics cold symptoms. Kids have a sore throat, runny nose, congestion. It's just mimicking other things. But the effects
of, because it's COVID and what we've been, what the ADPH has given us guidelines to do, we have to treat it very much different than it being a cold, the flu, things like that. And that's what makes it so hard, is because everybody wants to come back to school. But when we do that, parents especially, because it's going to affect children, and also the teachers have to realize that we're now putting many more people in a building close together and close proximity. And we have got to keep up with all those other mitigation things, the cleaning, even if you go back, you can still try and distance from people as much as you can. It's not just, oh, we're going back, let's forget about everything we've talked about and just go back like nothing's happening. So we have to remember those things, and we have to expect when we go back full time that we're going to see more cases. We're going to see more quarantines, because right now the 615 rule is taking us. So when we go back, and that's not in place, and the EPH says, well, you need to find out who was within 6 feet of that kid for more than 50 cumulative minutes for the whole day. That in itself is quite a job for somebody to have to get that information and then follow through with that information that you've gotten as far as quarantining those kids that it applies to. And just because you're quarantined one time doesn't mean you can't be quarantined again. You can be quarantined and then 3 days later come, get back to school for 3 days, and then maybe you're exposed to somebody else and now you go again. There's no limits to that quarantine. So unfortunately, we have to abide by the Alabama Department of Public Health guidelines that they've given us, the rules that say we have to report positive cases, we have to follow through on those contacts, and that's a lot of stuff to have to do.
So think about, in a normal flu season, we're going to have, in a bad peak, 10% of our kids will be have the flu. So because of contact tracing, now 10% times 4 kids, if you have 4 kids around
that's
that,
in an elementary school.
yeah.
You have a high school where they go to 7 periods and there's 4
Now,
kids in each period. That's a lot.
So you can see, obviously, we're at 40%. Now, here's the kicker. We've never, during flu season, had everyone with a mask on. And we've never done a cleaning.
Well, it might actually cut down on the flu this year.
That's my point. That's really our only hope, that some of these mitigation things, when it gets flu season, instead of being a 10% spike, we're at 2 or 3%, and now it doesn't turn into a disaster where we're quarantining 30 to 40% of the building. That's our only hope during the flu season, is that the mitigation efforts that we're using. So, I mean, I think this is, it's a mess. I do want to clarify. Nicole is, the 4.9% is just at Pelham High School. As a school system, we're at 1.97%. That's just kids quarantined. Yeah. So.
And what percent is positive?
Oh, I don't have the numbers in front of me. One or less.
We have a low positivity rate, but the contacts, unfortunately, some, you can't give everybody 6 feet for that 15-minute rule all day long throughout the day, especially if they're on a bus, if they're participating in extracurricular activities. There's all those other things that play into that. But, it's manageable right now, but it's going to get, it's going to increase quickly when those quarantines have to be done.
Okay.
Anybody knows how that's going to go. So.
All right. So the purpose of this meeting was to do the second budget hearing. And if there are board members, any last questions for any of our folks before we move into this, and I'll go through the budgets rather quickly.
Not any last questions, but I think, as I'm hearing, listening to people, I'm really satisfied and thankful for what y'all have done. As a parent, I've been frustrated at times. And I got to remember that I'm a board member. So those are two different things. But I know that there's no way that you as administrative personnel or teachers are coming to school and your job for a paycheck. You're just not. You come in because you love your kids and you love the job. And I don't think we can ask for much more. So, and I'm sorry, you love my kids and I appreciate it. So, God willing, we'll get out of this sometime.
Amen, brother.
Keep sending us courage, Bobby. We're gonna-
Okay, let's move on. We also have to go home tonight. So our second budget hearing, and again, board members, yes, we're gonna pass a budget because we have to pass a budget. There are, as I asked them, what are needs? We may spend more on subs this year. There are so many things in flux. We may have to add some people, and we're fortunate and blessed that we've managed our money well. And guess what? If we get to that, I may send an email and say, I'm going to approve some changes to the budget, and we'll amend it as we go. But let's go through the PowerPoint on the budget hearings. This is our second meeting as required. Again, our enrollment is up this year, 3394 compared to 3349. I'll tell you, it's not as, because we still have some kids out there that, are quote remote. We're having a hard time, and I'm gonna have to get Mr. Collins and student services. There's going to come a point in time we'll have to go track people down. But we do have a few of those situations, and we normally don't have that. We have almost 400 people that come to work for us every day. We get money from the federal, the state, and the local level. We are fortunate. 50% of our funds come from the local level. We are one of the few school systems where we have that. Most everyone else in the state, the majority of their money comes from state funds. And by the way, it's ready to interrupt me at any time. Our budget is almost $45 million. 1 month of operating balance, which is the state requirement, is equal to about 3.4 million. Sharia is estimating that we're going to finish with close to 12 million in last year's budget. We did not anticipate that. I think we put around 7 million. But remember, we also said we were going to take 4.5 million and move over to Pelham Oaks to do that. But the state bond came through. So all of a sudden, instead of finishing with around 7, we're going to finish around 11 and 12. So that currently finishes up us being equal to about 3.5 months of reserves. We do have a surplus in this budget of about $700,000. We expect to end, if everything goes to plan, well in excess of 2 months reserves at the end of the next fiscal year, depending on how many projects we decide to take on as a board through the school year that we've not brought to your attention. It is my goal by the next school board, we begin to bring projects to you, and we begin to have conversations about how we're going to spend those funds. Okay. Here's just a tracking. You have this of we have grown our fund balance since we began as a school system since 2014. That doesn't mean in 2016, 2017 we went down. It's not a bad thing if we decide to go down. It just means how we're going to allocate our resources. It may be a project again that we actually anticipated going down this year, but because of Pelham Oaks and the bond, we did not do so. Our local revenue is really strong. We're 7th in the state when you look at per child local revenue. But we also, because of the school system, we were 8th in the state. The percentage of money that was allocated for capital projects and debt, we're up there with Alabaster and Sagerland, and all of those are Alabaster and Sagerland are also new school systems. Auburn's one of the fastest growing school systems in the state. I'm proud of that. We'll put together a Excel doc showing you all of the other school systems and their administrative services. I just have not gotten to that. We typically give you that. But when you get that, you're going to see that we're below average in our administrative services. We got the 1 cent sales tax in Pelham. That's a blessing. Plus we get the half a cent from the county. Things that we are not fully funded, that this board spends extra money on are salary and benefits. We find almost 11 extra teachers. We also pay our teachers more. We also pay our administrators more than what the state would pay. If you're going to be competitive in this area, you're going to have to do those things. And so we do that, spend about almost $2.7 million in those areas. We pay more for school nurses. We're blessed that that's not even higher this year because we did get some COVID funding to help offset that. I told y'all the last time, right now we have $0 for local funds for bus drivers and all operations because the state transportation budget was healthy enough, and also because we bought so many new school buses in the past that our maintenance is low, and some other things. Sarita nor I have ever had a zero balance transportation budget. We're a little nervous about that, but we will check it out as we go. That has probably a lot to do with the maintenance and the things related to our buses. So federal dollars, the bigger ones are IDEA Part B. These are some people know these as exceptional education or special education funding. We use that to help pay for our coordinator, 5 teachers, a psychologist, and then there are additional services. We get entitlement programs from the federal government, Title I, Title II, Title III. Title I is based on students who are qualified for free and reduced lunches. We set aside a few things, and then the rest of the money is allocated to the elementary schools, which they pay for additional teachers. Of course, we work to get them anything that they want. Everywhere I was before I came here, in most school systems, they get the bottom line that they get from the state, and then they use their Title I money to supplement. Here we're able to basically use Title I money to help pay for things, but we also make sure they get everything that, well, maybe not everything that they want, but most everything. Title II funding goes into our what we call our CNI, our curriculum instruction budgets. Title III is used for our ESL program. IDA was approved back in 1975. I think that law, remember, it was always designed to fund special ed at 80%. Rate has never done that. The gap keeps getting wider. We spend about $1.4 million in local funding to provide services and staffing related to special education. ELL is an area that was also an unfunded mandate. However, we have seen a nice increase from our state ELL funds that help us offset the cost of some teachers. All of our budgets align to our strategic plan and what we call our 9 commitments. So let's spend a little time on that. School safety, the biggest part of school safety. $468,000 of discretionary fund go into school safety. Again, there's the transportation number. $1.64 million we'll be spending on transportation, but all of that's state funds, so zero in discretion. We're going to buy 12 new buses. I shared with y'all at the last meeting in the work session our bus purchase plan. The superintendent boards that follow us will be in good shape because we're going to leave them with a really nice fleet of buses. We've got a mental health contract with Central Alabama Wellness this year. That's what we normally have done. And then we've got some money. We normally spend $80,000 to the city for the SROs. We're not reducing anything that we're spending. It's just that we're going to use some at-risk funds to offset the local. This year would be $60,000 out of local. We've already discussed nursing. Our staff puts together a huge CNI budget, and we try to align and cover almost everything we can with state and federal dollars. There are about $217,000 worth of asks that we could not cover with state and federal dollars that the board will be chipping in to get them the materials that they need. $855,000 towards our commitment to have great educators. That's we spend $477. So we pay our teachers above the state pay. The extraordinary compensation, which is always a great morale thing, is in this budget. Academic supplements, we're actually working on that. We budgeted about 120, may go north of that. That is something that we kind of try to put together now, but we want to actually approve in the spring once all those things are completed. This year is going to really be different because all those clubs and all those things that we normally do, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that. So every year this board has made a very strong commitment to increase that. We, of course, had plans to do another increase for this year, got a little scared off because of the pandemic, not knowing what our local budgets would do, so we backed off of that a little bit. I studied why that went down, and I had an answer at the last board meeting. I can't remember what it was, but we have not increased our commitment in anything related to what we're doing to teachers, related to what we're paying them the salaries. I think that was the academic supplements is why that went down some. But anyway, we're still doing everything that we've done in the past, and I know that it is certainly on your agenda as well that we look really strongly next year at another pay raise for our teachers. That was in this year's budget. There is room, our surplus, to set aside more funds moving forward. Technology, we always have a healthy technology budget. I think you saw evidence of that tonight, why that keeps our things running and maintained. Extracurricular, we pay 108 different supplements for coaches and band and other things. That's the biggest expenditure related to do that. The extended day program is something we're also really looking at. You know, if we come back, we probably won't see extended day this semester. That's probably something we'll evaluate for the second semester, depending on how things go. Staffing, again, all the locally funded teachers, and then 1.7 million of this. This is our staffing. Personnel is always your biggest item, right? So almost 1.7 million related to schools, secretaries, and custodians, and those other things. We have our locally funded teacher units. Facilities and operations, 1.9 million. The biggest chunk of that is to pay for utilities. Our utilities are about $1 million a year. We have $97,000 for community support and planning. Most of that is a $40,000 line item for our communication materials and initiatives. Payments and projects. We have the 10 mil match that the state withholds $4.2 million of our state funds because we're in a fortunate school system that has a good tax base. So this is the equity program for the state. They withhold different amounts of money. They redistribute it to all school systems in the state. The district tax payment went way down. This is from the original separation agreement with Shelby County, where there were kids in Pelham who were still in Shelby County schools. So we collect taxes for those, and we make payment to them for those kids who are still in those schools. That number has gone down dramatically as more and more of our kids are in our school system and not in Shelby County. Our debt payment is about $5 million in this year's budget, although this has not been finalized yet, but I have thrown in there 1.9 million in projects for this year, which is what we will be going through as a board in future board meetings, looking at our different projects. So the positive impact of local funding is the 1 cent sales tax. When the city council started this school system, that is bringing in $5.5 million annually. We could not operate this school system without that 1 cent sales tax, and also the district tax payment that we are now controlling. The millage, the property taxes is about 6.6 million that in the past would go to Shelby County and be redistributed to all schools, including Pelham. Now every bit of that $6.6 million, which is the current estimate, is staying inside of our schools. So those two things combined allows us to be these things: financially strong, we got effective planning, we're fiscally responsible. We could do and buy a lot more, but I think we're good stewards of our taxpayers' money, and we try to do things the right way, and we just don't go back because we have the money to do so. We try to make sure we're efficient and operate our house like people have to operate their own houses. If we can do without purchasing it, then we're going to do without purchasing it. If it's a need, then we're going to go get it for our folks. Tonight I'm going to ask you to pass the budget here in just a second. Please remember, you know this budget will change, but it is the good news is we're not looking at a huge deficit. I think in Sarita's report last meeting, one of the things is there's $1 million increase in what she's budgeting in local revenues. I don't mind telling you that makes me a little nervous, but the numbers are there. We don't know what will happen with the economy and those things, but we do at least have some reserve cushion in case we do hit hard times. I think that we are prepared. Board members, I'm about to open it up to any questions from the public related to the budget, but and then I'll go as part of our new business, the board agenda will be to pass the budget. But are there any questions for Sarita or myself related to this budget?
I just want to ask a general question of Sarita. I mean, is there anything there that you have an issue with, or it's a red flag, or something that we need to be aware of?
No, not at all. Everything looked great. And the only thing, like you said, was the transportation. When I got down there and it was 0, I was concerned about that. And so I went over it about 3 or 4 times, re-added, recalculated with an add machine, make sure something wasn't awry. I went back through what's been spent in the current year and the prior year and the year before that. And it kept coming out 0. So if I missed something, I have no idea what it is. But other than that, I have no concerns whatsoever.
Great. Okay, all right, so, okay, are there any questions from the public that myself or the CSFO can answer, or that you would like clarification on? Seeing none, we will move on to new business. I only have one item under new business. It's my recommendation to approve the 2021 budget.
All right, we have the superintendent's recommendation. I'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're under discussion. I do want to thank, both of our executive officers for being very good stewards of our money. I think we've come a long way in a short period of time, facility-wise, salary-wise, we're not going to be yet, but we've certainly made a lot of progress. And we appreciate the good work that y'all have done managing our money. Other comments? Do not appear to be. So let's call for the vote. All those in favor of passing the budget, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the budget passes unanimously. All right, this gets us to, I'm adding this to the agenda, board members, to our public recognition. If there's anyone here that wishes to address the board on any general topic, this would be the time to do so. Do we have anyone? Don't see anyone tonight, so we'll move on to the board comments.
I have a comment.
Please comment.
And it's about so it's about the way that everyone's just handled themselves very professionally, very well, with again a lot of heat on them. I guess it includes us as well. We're not unscathed either, but it's really appreciated. I've spoken to 2 people, one in the Birmingham area whose child goes to Birmingham City Schools. They started remotely today. And all I could, being in a position that I'm in, all I could do is I was like, please be patient. Please they're trying. This is all I can tell you is that they're trying. She's like, they weren't right. They shouldn't have done this. Just stay calm and it's going to get better. And they know, they already know. So just hang in. And another person who's out of state and they just decided to go full remote rather than send their son in a blended atmosphere because the way it was presented, it sounded like the school didn't, again, last minute changes, just like we had to deal with. And this is in Michigan. So it's not Alabama. It's everywhere. And it's really they got an extra tutor. They're affluent, so they just did their thing. So which is fine, but we're doing great. And I appreciate each and every one of you for being here for our students and our parents. So that's all.
Well said.
Yeah, I want to say something. I'd like to make a couple of observations that came primarily from the last meeting and some of the comments that were made afterwards. Trusting social media for factual information is like trusting the California Psychic Hotline or the National Enquirer. Bottom line, social media is primarily an entertainment venue. It's not where you go to get factual information for the most part. And also virtually no new technology integration in any organization is ever seamless or without startup issues. I know, long experience at the police department. Anything new that you put in, it doesn't work properly to begin with. There's a break-in period. Think about it. Some of the most trusted names in technology, Apple, Amazon, AT&T, anytime they roll out a new device or new software, what happens? There's bugs, there's problems that have to be fixed. Why would we be any different? Parents and politicians second guessing our educational professional recipe for disaster. Do you tell your surgeon how to do the operation you've got planned for next week? You don't if you're smart. You tell your attorney how to handle your sticky legal issue you've got coming up in court. You shouldn't. He's a professional. We need to trust our trained, experienced teachers and support staff to be up to this challenge. And what you folks have told us tonight tells me that you're well up to the challenge. You're way past it. Y'all knocked it out of the ballpark as far as I'm concerned. You guys are work tirelessly to address all the concerns and issues presented by this crisis, but we understand the solutions are not instantaneous. We've got to be patient. Our parents have got to be patient. The board has got to be patient to let you professionals lead us through this. We've got an established chain of command in our school system. Bypass this established chain of command by taking complaints and concerns directly to board members without first going through the chain of command is usually counterproductive in my personal opinion. The people that can actually help you with your issues are the folks in the chain of command, not so much individual board members. We as individual board members do not have the legal authority to tell any of you people to do anything. That's against the law. We shouldn't be doing that. And we should not leave the general public believing that we can't solve all their problems. They need to go to you folks. Y'all are the pros. If you go up the chain of command with concerns all the way to the superintendent and you're a parent, you're still not happy, yeah, then come see the board. That's something that we can probably help you with at that point in time, but you followed the correct chain of command. It doesn't do any good to skip a rung in the organizational ladder. It just creates confusion. You know, I saw that all the time in the police department. Everybody wants to talk to the chief. I don't know why, but they did. But I'm like Dr. Cofield said, I can't help it. It's the people that are doing the work that can actually help you first. It's very rare that it has to go all the way up to the top dog to get something changed. Panic's not helping. In my opinion, we should let our professional educational and medical staff guide us through this crisis. I just wanted to say that. I don't say a lot on this board, but I appreciate what you folks do. And I think the large majority of our parents do too. If I'm wrong, then call me.
Anybody want to try to top that?
Nope.
I would just say this, you know, we don't know what lies ahead. And a wise man once said, but a prisoner at Auschwitz, you cannot control the circumstances that happen in life, because you can control how you respond to them. And this is a quote from Viktor Frankl that I would like to share with you. And I think this is the way that we should approach things together. I've underestimated the great secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to part. The salvation of man is through love and in love. And that's what it's all about with our children. I think that's how we will move ahead. And we need to encourage our people by our example, just as you have done, to move ahead together. It is so important that we stay unified and work through everything as one. If we do that, not only will we get through this, we'll get a lot of people will look to it. This is how you do it. And I think we all thank you greatly for the things you've done. You're magnificent people. And please know how much you appreciate it. With that in mind, if there's another comment, I would remind everybody that we do have a meeting on September 28th, 2020. The work session will be at 7:30 a.m. and the meeting itself will be at 6:30 p.m. And they will be here. And it will be streamed via YouTube. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.